They threw him off a cliff to die. His own pack, his own family. But what crawled out of that river wasn't the trusting alpha they betrayed. It was something far more dangerous. This is the story of Riker Thorn, the wolf who came back from the dead to remind them all what real power looks like. If you want to see how an alpha reclaims everything they took from him, stick around until the end. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this pack reaches. The council fire burned low in the great clearing, casting warped shadows across the faces of wolves who'd sworn their lives to Riker Thorn. He should have noticed how those shadows seemed to twist wrong that night. Should have seen how Darius Vane's eyes never quite met his anymore. But trust makes you blind in the worst ways. "We need to discuss the northern boundary," Darius said, his voice smooth as river stone. He stood at the edge of the circle, firelight catching the silver in his dark hair. "The Clearwater Pack has been testing us again." Riker rolled his shoulders, feeling the familiar weight of leadership settle across them. 3 years as Alpha of Black Ridge territory. 3 years of keeping the peace, maintaining the borders, making sure every wolf in his pack had enough to eat and a safe place to shift under the moon. He was proud of that, proud of what they'd built together. "Let them test," he said. "Our markers are clear. Our boundaries are respected by everyone who matters." "Are they, though?" The voice came from his left. Marcus Cole, one of his enforcers. Good fighter, loyal as they came. Or so Riker had thought. "Word is the Clearwater Alpha thinks we've gone soft." Riker turned to face him. Soft? Without a mate. Without heirs. Marcus shifted his weight, and something about the movement felt rehearsed. "Some are saying an alpha without legacy is an alpha without future." The words hung in the cold air between them. Around the circle, 12 wolves watched. 12 of his most trusted. The inner council. These were the wolves he'd fought beside, bled beside. The ones who'd helped him take leadership when the old alpha, his father, had fallen to age and illness. "My legacy is this pack," Riker said quietly. "Every one of you. That's the future I'm building." Pretty words. Darius stepped closer to the fire. But words don't hold territory. Strength does. Blood does. There it was. The first crack in the facade. Riker felt his wolf stir beneath his skin, sensing the threat before his human mind fully caught up. "You questioning my strength, Darius?" "I'm questioning your judgment." The beta's voice grew louder, playing to the crowd now. 3 packs have approached us about alliances through mating bonds. 3. You've turned them all down. Meanwhile, our borders shrink, our numbers stay the same, and you spend your days playing peacekeeper instead of conqueror. "We don't need conquest," Riker said. "We need stability. We need a real alpha," Marcus again, emboldened now. "One who understands that peace is what the weak call surrender." The words came too fast, too coordinated. This wasn't a discussion. It was a performance, one they'd practiced. Riker's eyes swept the circle. 2 wolves near the back wouldn't meet his gaze. 3 others shifted nervously, hands flexing like they were fighting the urge to reach for weapons they shouldn't have brought to a council meeting. His beta, his enforcers, his council, all of them in on it. The realization hit like a physical blow. Not because he couldn't believe it, betrayal was always possible, but because he'd been so damn careful. He'd built this pack on loyalty, on trust, on the idea that they were family beyond blood. He'd been so careful, and it hadn't mattered at all. "When?" he asked softly. Darius smiled. It was a predator's expression, all teeth and no warmth. "When what?" "When did you decide I had to die?" The circle went still. No one bothered to deny it anymore. "About 6 months ago," Darius said conversationally. "Right around the time you turned down the alliance with Ironwood territory. That was a good deal, Riker. Their alpha's daughter, the western hunting grounds, access to the mountain passes. But you said no because you weren't ready for that commitment." He laughed, bitter and sharp. "You're never ready. You're never hungry enough, and the pack suffers for it. The pack is thriving. The pack is stagnant." Darius's control cracked, real anger bleeding through. "We could be the strongest territory in the region. We could have wolves from every pack seeking to join us. But instead we sit here, playing nice, following your rules about honor and family and all that garbage you learned from your father." "My father built this pack." Your father was weak too. He just died before we had to do something about it. Riker's wolf snarled inside him, demanding blood, demanding dominance. But he held it back. Barely. And you think you'll do better? I know I will. Darius gestured to the circle. We all do. This isn't personal, Riker. You're just not the alpha we need anymore. So you'll kill me, take over, and then what? Rule through fear? Break every bond I built? We'll rule through strength, Marcus cut in. The way it's supposed to be. The way it's supposed to be, Riker repeated slowly. His mind was racing now, calculating odds, counting allies. The 12 in the circle were against him, but the pack was over 60 strong. If he could just get word out, get to the main compound. Don't bother, Darius said, reading his thoughts. The others aren't coming. They think we're having a standard council meeting. By the time anyone realizes something's wrong, it'll be done. You really think killing me will be that easy? No. Darius's smile returned. I think it'll be exactly as hard as it needs to be. They moved fast. Faster than Riker expected from wolves, he thought he knew. Marcus came from the left, a silver knife in his hand, one of the ritual blades from the ceremony hall, Riker noted distantly. 2 others rushed from the right. Darius stayed back, directing, always the strategist. Riker's wolf exploded to the surface. The shift was instantaneous, practiced through thousands of moons. Bones reformed, muscles elongated, senses sharpened to supernatural clarity. His clothes shredded as dark gray fur rippled across his body. The first attacker caught his jaws around the throat. Riker didn't hesitate. He bit down, felt the crunch of cartilage and the hot spray of blood. The wolf dropped, choking, dying. 1 down, 11 to go. He spun, claws raking across Marcus's face. The enforcer screamed, stumbling back. But 3 more were on Riker now, teeth sinking into his shoulder, his flank, his hind leg. The pain was white-hot and distant all at once. Battle focus. It was the only thing keeping him alive. He threw his weight sideways, crushing one wolf against a tree. Heard ribs crack. Twisted and caught another's leg in his jaws, bit down until bone splintered. The wolf howled and limped away, but there were too many. For everyone he hurt, 2 more found an opening. Silver blades flashed in the firelight, illegal in pack challenges, but apparently honor was as dead as Riker was about to be. A blade carved deep into his side. Another caught his back leg. He stumbled, and that was all they needed. 4 wolves piled onto him, bearing him down through sheer weight and numbers. He fought, snarling, snapping, drawing blood with every movement, but his strength was bleeding out with every wound. Darius's wolf padded into view, massive, black-furred, unblooded. He'd hung back and let the others do the work. Smart, cowardly, but smart. You were right about one thing, Darius said. In wolf form, the words came out as growls and body language, but Riker understood perfectly. This wasn't easy. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Riker tried to rise, couldn't. His legs wouldn't hold him. But not strong enough. Darius looked at the others. The cliff. Like we planned. They dragged him. Through the forest, his claws leaving furrows in the earth as he fought for purchase. Through the underbrush, branches tearing at wounds, already leaking his life into the soil. All the way to the edge of Raven's Drop, where the land fell away into nothing and the river raged 300 feet below. The council clearing had been chosen for privacy. The cliff was chosen for finality. No one survived Raven's Drop. Not even alphas. They shifted back to human form, breathing hard, some of them bleeding from wounds Riker had managed to inflict. He tried to shift too, tried to hold on to his human mind, but the damage was too severe. His wolf form was keeping him alive, barely, and releasing it now would mean dying right here instead of in the river. Maybe that would be better. Any last words? Darius asked. Riker's wolf eyes found his betrayer's face. He memorized it. The satisfied smile, the ambitious gleam, the complete lack of remorse. If he survived this, and some small, stubborn part of him insisted that, if was still possible, he would remember this moment, every detail, every face, every wolf who stood by and let it happen. Didn't think so, Darius said. For what it's worth, you were a decent alpha, just not the one we needed. Maybe in another life we could have been friends. We were never friends, Marcus spat. He was a weak idealist playing at strength. Doesn't matter now. Darius nodded to the others. Do it. They lifted him between them, carried him to the edge. For a moment, Riker saw the drop, the jagged rocks, the white water churning like it was hungry for him. Then they let go. Falling felt longer than it should have, long enough for his life to flash before his eyes, except it didn't. No montage of happy memories, no peaceful acceptance, just anger, burning, righteous, pure anger at the betrayal, at the waste, at dying before he could make any of them pay. The water hit like concrete. Pain exploded through every nerve. The current grabbed him, pulled him under, smashed him against rocks he couldn't see. He tried to swim, tried to fight, but his body wasn't responding anymore. Too many wounds, too much blood lost. The river dragged him downstream, bouncing him off boulders, filling his lungs when he tried to breathe. His vision went dark at the edges, then darker still. The last thing Riker Thorne thought before consciousness left him was that Darius was wrong about one thing. This was personal, and if he somehow survived, he'd make damn sure they all understood just how personal it was. The current carried him for miles, past the pack territories, past the marked boundaries, into the deep wilderness where civilization ended and the old wild began. The water grew calmer as it widened, the violent rapids giving way to steady flow. His body washed up on a muddy bank where the river bent east. The rain started sometime before dawn, cold and relentless. It washed the blood from his fur, filled the gashes in his side, pooled around his broken body. He didn't move, didn't breathe as far as anyone watching could tell. For all purposes, Alpha Riker Thorne was dead. The rain continued through the morning. By afternoon, the sky had cleared to that crystalline blue that only came after storms. Birds returned to the trees. A deer ventured to the river's edge to drink, saw the massive wolf corpse, and bounded away. As the sun began its descent toward evening, the first scavengers appeared. Crows, circling, cawing their harsh claims. They landed nearby, hopped closer, emboldened by the stillness. One of them pecked at Riker's ear. His eyes snapped open. The crow squawked and took flight, along with its companions. Riker tried to move and couldn't. Everything hurt. Not the sharp pain of fresh injury, but the deep, grinding agony of damage already trying to heal wrong. His accelerated wolf healing had kept him alive, but it couldn't fix everything. Not when the injuries were this severe. He needed help. He needed footsteps, human, light, careful, approaching from downstream. Riker's survival instinct screamed at him to run, to hide, to do anything but lie here vulnerable. But his body had other ideas. The most he could manage was a low growl that came out more like a whimper. The footsteps stopped. "Well," a woman's voice said, soft and measured. "That's interesting." Riker couldn't turn his head far enough to see her. All he caught was a glimpse of leather boots, worn and practical, and the hem of a long coat. "You're in bad shape, Wolf." She moved into his line of sight, crouching just out of reach. "Ravens drop bad, if I'm reading the wounds right. Silver and teeth and a 300-foot fall into angry water." She was maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a simple braid and eyes that seemed to see more than they should. No fear in those eyes, which meant she was either very brave or very stupid. Riker was betting on brave. "The question," she continued, studying him like he was a puzzle to solve, "is whether you went over that cliff running from something or running from someone. The pattern of the wounds suggests someone. Multiple someones. Pack dispute, maybe?" Riker's growl gained an edge. She was too close to the truth. "Easy." She held up empty hands. "I'm not pack politics. Don't care who's alpha of what or who wronged who. But I do care about dying wolves washing up on my doorstep, so to speak." She stood, brushed mud off her knees. "My name's Lyra Cade. I live about a half-mile from here. I can help you, but you need to decide if you trust me enough to let me try. If you don't, that's fine. I'll leave, and nature will take its course." Her eyes met his. "But if you want to live, if you want to heal, if you want another chance at whatever it is you're angry about, and Wolf, you are angry, I can smell it from here, then you shift human and let me get you inside before infection sets in. Trust." The word tasted like ash. Riker had trusted his pack, his beta, his council. Look where that got him. But Lyra was right about one thing. He was angry. More angry than he'd ever been in his life. And that anger needed him alive to mean anything. He gathered what little strength he had and reached for his human form. The shift was agony. Bones grinding back into place. muscles tearing themselves apart and reforming, wounds stretching and bleeding fresh. He screamed halfway through, a sound that started as a wolf's howl and ended as a man's cry of pain. When it was done, he lay naked and gasping on the muddy bank, every inch of him shaking. "Good," Lyra said clinically. She shrugged off her coat and draped it over him. "Can you walk?"
No.
"Can you crawl?" Riker looked at her. Really looked. She was serious, not offering to help, just asking what he was capable of, testing him. "Maybe," he managed. "Then crawl. I'm not strong enough to carry you, and dragging you will make things worse. My place is that way." She pointed downstream. "I'll walk slow. Keep up or don't. Your choice." She turned and started walking. For a moment, Riker just lay there, disbelieving. Then the anger sparked again. He'd be damned if he survived Raven's drop just to die of exposure because some hermit healer wanted to see if he was tough enough to save. He got his hands under him, pushed. His arms shook but held. He dragged himself forward a foot, then another. Every movement was its own nightmare, but he kept going. Following Lyra's steady footsteps, following the promise of shelter and survival and maybe, eventually, revenge. The half-mile took forever. By the time Lyra's cabin came into view, a sturdy structure built into the hillside, smoke rising from a stone chimney, Riker's vision was graying at the edges again. But he'd made it, on his own strength, broken as it was. Lyra waited at the door. Inside, there's a cot near the fire. He crawled in, managed to drag himself onto the cot, and immediately passed out. When he woke, it was dark outside and firelight danced across rough-hewn walls. He was still on the cot, now covered with heavy blankets. Bandages wrapped his torso, his leg, his shoulder. The scent of herbs he didn't recognize filled the air. "You're awake," Lyra said from somewhere to his right. "Good. Drink this." She held out a clay mug filled with something that smelled like concentrated forest floor. Riker tried to sit up, gasped at the pain, and fell back. "Don't be stupid," she said flatly. "I'll help you." She did, propping him up enough to drink. The liquid tasted worse than it smelled, but warmth spread through him almost immediately. His wolf stirred, recognizing something in the mixture. "Willow bark for pain," Lyra explained, settling back into a chair by the fire. "Yarrow and comfrey for the wounds. A few other things your pack probably doesn't know about anymore." She paused. "And wolfsbane, just a touch, to keep your healing from going too fast." Riker's eyes snapped to her. "You poisoned me? I balanced you. Your body's trying to heal major trauma at supernatural speed. That causes problems, bones setting wrong, scar tissue building up where it shouldn't, infection spreading faster than your immune system can handle it. The wolfsbane slows everything down, gives the healing time to do it right." She sipped from her own mug. "You'll thank me when you can walk without a limp." He studied her in the firelight. "You know a lot about wolves. I know a lot about healing. Wolves just happen to be difficult patients." She met his gaze evenly. "What's your name?" He hesitated. Names had power, but she'd already saved his life. "Riker." "Just Riker?" "Just Riker." She nodded, accepting that. "Well, just Riker, you're going to be here a while. Those wounds were severe even by wolf standards. The silver's the worst of it. Silver poisoning takes time to work out of your system, even with help." "How long?" "A month. Maybe 2. Depends on how well you follow instructions." 2 months. 2 months while Darius consolidated power, rewrote pack history, made himself the hero and Riker the villain. 2 months while the betrayal went unpunished and— "Stop," Lyra said. "What?" "Whatever you're thinking about, stop. You can't do anything about it right now. All you can do is heal or die. Pick one." Riker's jaw clenched. "You don't understand." "I understand that you're angry. I understand that whoever threw you off that cliff is probably sleeping peacefully tonight while you're lying here barely alive. I understand that's not fair, not just, not right." She leaned forward. "But I also understand that revenge is a dish best served by someone who can actually stand up long enough to serve it. So for now, just Riker, you shut up, drink your medicine, and let your body do what it needs to do. The world will still be broken when you're strong enough to fix it." Ian. She was right. He hated that she was right, but she was. "Fine," he ground out. "Good." She stood, moved to bank the fire. Sleep. Your body needs it. I'll be here if you need anything. Why? The question came out before he could stop it. Why help me? Lyra paused, her back to him. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. Because everyone deserves a second chance. Even broken alphas who wash up half dead on riverbanks. She'd called him Alpha, not Wolf, Alpha, which meant she knew more than she'd let on. But Riker was too tired to pursue it. The herbs were pulling him down into sleep again, warm and heavy. His last conscious thought was that if he was going to be stuck here for 2 months, he had a lot of questions for Lyra Cade. Questions about who she was, how she knew what she knew, and why she lived alone in the forbidden lands where no pack dared to settle. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow he'd ask. Tonight, he'd just try to survive until dawn. Outside the cabin, the river rushed on in the darkness, carrying away the last traces of the Alpha Riker Thorn had been. What would crawl out of this place when the healing was done? That remained to be seen. But the wolves who'd betrayed him should have made sure he was dead. Because the one thing worse than a powerful enemy is a powerful enemy who has nothing left to lose and all the time in the world to plan their return. The first week blurred together in a haze of fever and forced medicine. Riker drifted in and out of consciousness, his body fighting battles he couldn't see. Infection, silver poisoning, bones trying to knit themselves back together in ways that made him want to scream. Sometimes he did scream. Lyra never flinched, just held him down when the convulsions got bad and poured more of that bitter tea down his throat when they subsided. By the second week, the fever broke. He woke one morning with a clear head for the first time since the river, and the clarity brought something worse than pain. Memory. Every detail of that night at the council fire played on repeat behind his eyes. Darius's smile, Marcus's knife, the coordinated attack, the fall. "You're thinking too loud," Lyra said from her workbench across the room. She was grinding something with a mortar and pestle, the rhythmic sound oddly soothing. "I can hear it from here." "How long have I been here?" 13 days. 13 days. Almost 2 weeks. What had Darius told the pack? That Riker had abandoned them? Run away? Been killed by rogues? The story didn't matter as much as the fact that it had 13 days to take root, to become truth in the minds of wolves who'd once called him Alpha. "Try to sit up," Lyra said, not looking at him. Riker pushed himself upright slowly. His ribs protested, but held. Progress. Why? Because lying in bed for 2 months will atrophy muscles you're going to need. And because I'm tired of helping you piss in a bucket. Despite everything, Riker almost smiled. Lyra had zero bedside manner in the traditional sense, but there was something refreshing about her bluntness. No pity, no coddling, just facts. He swung his legs over the side of the cot. The bandages on his left thigh were clean, recently changed. "You do this often? Patch up broken wolves?" "You're the first in about 5 years." "What happened 5 years ago?" She finally looked at him, her dark eyes unreadable. "Someone else made bad decisions and paid for them. He didn't make it." She set down the pestle. "You're doing better than he did, though. Younger, stronger constitution, more stubborn." "That last one's important?" "Extremely. The wolves who survive aren't always the strongest. They're the ones too stubborn to die." She crossed to him, knelt to examine his leg wound. Her hands were clinical, efficient. "This is healing well. The silver's almost out of your system. Another week and you'll be able to walk without support. And then? And then you start the real work." Something in her tone made Riker's wolf perk up. "What real work?" Lyra sat back on her heels. "You planning to go back?" "Yes." "To reclaim your pack from the beta who tried to kill you?" "Yes." "The beta who now has had weeks to consolidate power, eliminate any wolves loyal to you, and rewrite the narrative so you're the villain?" Riker's jaw clenched. "Yes." "Then you need to be better than you were. Stronger, smarter, harder to kill. The Alpha who trusted his counsel and got thrown off a cliff for it. He's dead. If you go back as him, you'll just die again. Probably faster." She stood, moved to a shelf lined with jars and bottles. "But if you go back as something new, something they're not prepared for, you might actually stand a chance." "You offering to train me?" "I'm offering to teach you what your pack forgot." She pulled down a leather-bound book, old and worn. Wolves used to be more than just dominance and territory fights. There was knowledge passed down through generations. ways of moving, thinking, fighting that went beyond brute strength. She opened the book, revealing pages covered in dense handwriting and detailed sketches. Most packs lost it, got too focused on the physical, forgot about the mental. But some of us remember. Riker stared at the book. What are you, Lara? That's a complicated question. She closed the book gently. Let's just say I used to run with a pack, a long time ago, and I learned that sometimes the strongest wolves are the ones who walk away before the fight turns them into something they don't recognize. She met his eyes. You want revenge. I understand that. But revenge without wisdom is just suicide with extra steps. So teach me wisdom. I'll teach you control. Wisdom you'll have to figure out yourself. She set the book on the table between them. But first, you need to be able to stand without shaking. So let's start there. The next 3 weeks were harder than anything Riker had experienced. Not the physical pain, though there was plenty of that as his body healed, but the mental discipline Lyra demanded. She made him meditate when his wolf wanted to rage, made him breathe through exercises when every instinct screamed to shift and run, made him sit perfectly still for hours while she lectured about pack dynamics, power structures, and the psychology of wolves who followed versus wolves who led. You think Darius took your pack through strength? She asked one afternoon while Riker balanced on one leg, holding a river stone above his head. His injured leg trembled, but held. He took it through betrayal. He took it through perception. He made the pack perceive that you were weak, that your leadership was holding them back, that he could offer them something better. She walked a slow circle around him. Perception is everything in pack politics. It doesn't matter if you're the strongest alpha in the territory if your pack believes you're weak. Belief shapes reality. The stone wobbled. Riker's arms burned. So when you go back, Lyra continued, you can't just beat Darius in a fight. You have to destroy the perception he built. Make the pack see what he really is. Make them question everything they've believed for the last month. And how do I do that? By being someone they don't expect. Someone who doesn't fit the narrative Darius created. She stopped in front of him. Drop the stone. He did. It thudded into the dirt. Your old self would have charged in, challenged Darius to single combat, relied on being the better fighter. Am I right? Riker nodded slowly. And you probably would have won that fight. You're a better fighter than Darius ever was. But what happens after? You kill him, take back the alpha position, and then what? The wolves who betrayed you are still there. The doubt he planted is still there. You'd be ruling through fear and recent bloodshed, waiting for the next ambitious wolf to try what Darius did. She was right. He hated it, but she was right. So what's the alternative? You dismantle everything, publicly. You expose not just Darius, but everyone who helped him. You make the pack confront what they allowed to happen. You make them choose, not between you and Darius, but between truth and lies, honor and betrayal. She picked up the stone, handed it back to him. Again. Other leg this time. As winter settled over the forbidden lands, Riker's body healed and his mind sharpened. Lyra was a brutal teacher, offering no praise and plenty of criticism. She made him hunt with his human mind, leading his wolf instincts instead of the other way around. Made him track prey for days without catching it, learning patience over impulse. Made him study the book she'd shown him until he could recite passages about pack hierarchy and power dynamics in his sleep. The wolf who controls himself controls the pack, she quoted one evening as they sat by the fire. Outside, snow fell in thick curtains. Your father understood that? It was the first time she'd mentioned his father directly. You knew him? I knew of him. He had a reputation. Fair, strong, built loyalty through respect rather than fear. She poked at the fire with an iron rod. But he also sheltered you from the darker parts of pack politics. Let you believe that trust and honor were enough. They should be enough. Should be. Aren't. She pulled the rod back, examined the glowing tip. The wolves who threw you off that cliff didn't wake up one morning deciding to betray you. It was a slow process, small resentments, tiny doubts, building over time. Darius just knew how to exploit what was already there. Riker's hands clenched. You're saying it was my fault. I'm saying you missed the signs. That's not the same thing. She set the rod aside. Leadership isn't just about being strong or fair or honorable. It's about seeing the pack as it actually is, not as you want it to be. Seeing the wolves who smile to your face and plot behind your back. Seeing the cracks before they become breaks. So trust no one. Is that the lesson? Trust wisely. Know the difference between loyalty and compliance, between respect and fear. She stood, stretched. Your father's way worked for him because he came up in different times. The packs were smaller, more isolated. Wolves knew each other from birth, built bonds that actually meant something. But the territories have grown. New wolves come from other packs, bringing their own ambitions. The old ways don't work anymore, not without adaptation. She was probably right about that too. Riker had noticed the changes, the pack growing faster than the bonds that held it together. But he thought strength of leadership would be enough to overcome that. Another mistake to add to the list. There's something else you need to understand, Lyra said, her voice going quiet. When you go back, some of those wolves who betrayed you, they'll regret it. They'll have spent weeks under Darius's rule and realized what they lost. They'll want to make amends. Good. No. Dangerous. She turned to face him. Because you'll want to forgive them. Your instinct will be to rebuild what you had, to restore the family feeling. But you can't. Not completely. The moment you showed weakness, the moment you forgave without consequence, is the moment the next ambitious wolf starts plotting. So I execute them all? Rule through terror? You make examples of the leaders and offer conditional mercy to the followers. You rebuild trust slowly, over time, with wolves who earn it through action, not words. She moved to the window, looked out at the snow. It's a harder way to lead, lonelier, but it's the only way that lasts. Riker joined her at the window. His reflection stared back, and he barely recognized it. Thinner, harder, with eyes that had seen too much. You ever miss it, being part of a pack? Every day. Her voice was soft. But missing something and needing it are different things. I chose this life because the alternative was becoming someone I couldn't live with. She glanced at him. You'll have to make a similar choice soon. The Riker who was thrown off that cliff can't be the Riker who goes back. That version of you is too soft, too trusting. You'll need to be harder. I don't want to be hard. No one does. But sometimes life doesn't give us choices we like, just choices we can survive. She turned from the window. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start combat training. Real training, not the dominance posturing you learned as alpha. The kind of fighting that wins wars, not just challenges. That night, Riker lay awake listening to the wind howl outside. Somewhere beyond these forbidden lands, his pack, former pack, was settling into a new normal under Darius's rule. Were any of them questioning what happened? Were any of them searching for the truth? Or had they all just accepted the story they'd been fed, moved on, forgotten the alpha who'd tried to build something better? His wolf snarled at the thought, wanting blood, wanting revenge. But for the first time since the river, Riker held that rage at bay and thought strategically. Lyra was right. Charging back in anger would just get him killed. But coming back with a plan, with knowledge, with the ability to see through Darius's manipulations, that might actually work. The question was whether he could become what he needed to be without losing what made him different from Darius in the first place. Morning came gray and cold. Lyra had him outside before dawn, moving through forms she called old training, precise movements that engaged both human and wolf reflexes simultaneously. It looked like dancing, felt like torture, and after an hour, Riker was drenched in sweat despite the freezing air. Again, Lyra said, demonstrating a sequence. You're still thinking like a wolf who occasionally has human moments. You need to think like something in between, something that can use both sets of instincts at once. That's not possible. It's not common. But it's possible. Your father could do it, in his prime. Not many alphas can. She moved through the form again, her body flowing between positions with impossible grace. It's why he was so hard to beat in a real fight. He didn't rely on just strength, or just speed, or just instinct. He used everything. Riker tried to mirror her movements, stumbled, tried again. How do you know so much about him? Because I fought him once. She didn't break her form. Long time ago, different circumstances. I lost, but it was close. Close enough that we talked afterward, traded some knowledge. He taught me about pack bonds. I taught him about the old ways. She paused, looked at him. He was a good man. You're like him in a lot of ways, too idealistic, too trusting, too willing to see the best in wolves who don't deserve it. Sounds like you didn't like him much. I respected him immensely, didn't agree with his methods, but I respected his intentions. She resumed the form. He would have been disappointed by what happened to you, but he also would have understood why. His way of leadership required a certain kind of pack, and yours wasn't it anymore. They trained until midday, when Lyra called a break. Riker collapsed against a tree, his body screaming. But it was a good pain, the kind that came from pushing limits instead of being broken by them. "You're getting stronger," Lyra observed, handing him a water skin. "Another few weeks and you'll be ready." "For what?" "To see if you can actually do what you say you want to do." She sat across from him, cross-legged in the snow. "I've been thinking about your pack situation, the timing, the number of conspirators, the way they moved. This wasn't just Darius being ambitious. This was organized, planned months in advance." "I know. Which means there's more to it than you realize. Darius had to have support from outside your pack, other alphas maybe, or wolves with resources who wanted your territory." She pulled out a small knife, started carving patterns in a piece of wood. "You go back just to deal with Darius, and you might miss the bigger threat." Riker hadn't considered that. He'd been so focused on the betrayal itself that he hadn't thought about who else might benefit from his fall. "The Clearwater Pack," he said slowly. "Marcus mentioned them at the council, said they thought we'd gone soft. Clearwater's alpha is ambitious, young, strong, wants to expand his territory." Lyra's knife moved in precise strokes. "If Darius promised him access to your lands in exchange for support, that would explain a lot. So I might be walking into more than just a pack dispute." "You're definitely walking into more than that. The question is whether you're smart enough to see all the pieces before making your move." She held up the wood, a wolf's head carved in rough detail. "Chess, not checkers. You understand?" "I understand." "Good. Because when you do go back, you'll need allies, real ones, not the fair-weather wolves who abandoned you. Can you think of anyone in your pack who might have stayed loyal?" Riker ran through the roster in his mind. 60 wolves, give or take. 12 at the council clearing who'd tried to kill him. That left 48 possibles. But how many of those had been brought in on Darius's plan afterward? How many had chosen the new alpha over loyalty to the old? "Elena," he said finally. "She runs the nursery, watches over the young wolves. She's been with the pack since my father's time. Hated politics, never came to councils unless forced. So she might not know the full story. If anyone was kept in the dark, it's her." Riker took a long drink. "There's also Garrett, old enforcer, retired from active duty but still trains the young fighters. He and my father were friends. He might have questions about what happened." "Might have questions isn't the same as stayed loyal." "No, but it's a place to start." Riker handed back the water skin. "If I can get to them, convince them of the truth, they might help spread doubt about Darius's story. Or they might turn you in immediately, and Darius will finish what he started." Lyra set down her carving. "You can't go in blind, Riker. You need intelligence. You need to know what the pack believes, who's actually in power, what alliances Darius has made. Walking in without that information is suicide. So what do you suggest?" She was quiet for a moment, thinking. "There's a wolf I know, lives near the border between your territory and the wildlands. He's not pack, but he trades with several of them. Hears things. If anyone would know what's happening in Blackridge right now, it's him." "You trust him?" "I trust that he loves gossip more than he loves anybody's politics. He'll tell you what he knows for the right price." She stood, brushed snow off her pants. "We'll go see him in a week. That'll give you time to heal the rest of the way, and give me time to make sure you won't do anything stupid." "I don't do stupid things." Lyra's look could have frozen fire. "You trusted a council of 12 wolves who all turned on you at the same time. That's the definition of stupid. Don't do it again." The week passed in intensive training. Lyra pushed him harder than before, testing not just his physical recovery but his mental control. She'd attack without warning, forcing him to react with strategy instead of instinct. She'd set traps in the forest and make him find them before they triggered. She'd wake him in the middle of the night with hypothetical scenarios. 3 wolves corner you in an alley. What do you do? Your beta challenges you publicly. How do you respond? A neighboring alpha offers an alliance that seems too good. What's the catch? By the end of the week, Riker's mind felt as sharp as his claws. He could think through multiple scenarios simultaneously, see the angles he'd missed before. Lyra had turned him into something harder, colder, more calculating. He wasn't sure he liked what he was becoming, but he couldn't deny it was necessary. The morning they set out to find Lyra's contact was crisp and clear. They traveled in human form, Lyra setting a pace that would have exhausted the Riker from a month ago. Now he kept up easily, his body finally whole again. His name is Finn, Lyra explained as they walked. He's old, probably 70 in human years, but strong as ever. Lives alone, doesn't shift much anymore. But his ears work just fine, and wolves talk around him like he's furniture. He picks up a lot. Why does he live alone? Same reason I do. Got tired of pack politics, walked away before it killed him. She ducked under a low branch. Not everyone who leaves a pack is a rogue or a coward, Riker. Sometimes the smartest wolves are the ones who know when to quit. They reached Finn's place by mid-afternoon, a small cabin built into the side of a hill, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Smoke rose from a chimney that was probably older than Riker. Lyra knocked 3 times, paused, knocked twice more. Some kind of signal. The door opened to reveal a man who might have been handsome once, but was now all edges and wrinkles. His eyes, though, they were sharp as broken glass and just as dangerous. "Lyra Cade," he said, his voice rough as tree bark. "Thought you were dead." "Not yet. Can we come in?" Finn's gaze shifted to Riker, studied him with uncomfortable intensity. "Who's the pup?" "Someone who needs information. And before you ask, yes, I'll trade for it." Something passed between them, some understanding Riker didn't catch. Finn stepped aside. "Come in then, but wipe your feet. I just cleaned." The cabin's interior was cramped but surprisingly well kept. Books lined one wall, maps covered another. The scent of tobacco and old coffee filled the air. "Sit," Finn ordered, gesturing to a worn couch. "I'll make tea, and then you'll tell me what you want, and I'll tell you what it'll cost." While Finn busied himself with a kettle, Riker examined the maps. They showed packed territories across the region, marked with notations in precise handwriting. Dates, names, alliance symbols. This old wolf had been tracking pack politics for years. "You're looking at Blackridge," Finn said without turning. "Recent changes there. Interesting ones." Riker's pulse quickened. "What kind of changes?" "The kind that happen when an alpha disappears and a beta gets ambitious." Finn brought over 3 chipped mugs, steam rising. "Riker Thorne went over Ravensdrop about 6 weeks ago. Body never found, so officially he's just missing. But everyone knows what missing means." "Everyone believes that?" Riker kept his voice neutral. "Most do. Darius Vane tells a good story. Riker couldn't handle the pressure of leadership, made some bad decisions, ran away rather than face the consequences. Some wolves buy it completely. Others have questions but keep them to themselves because Darius's friends are in all the right positions now." Finn sipped his tea, eyes on Riker. "Why are you asking, pup? You don't strike me as someone with casual interest in Blackridge politics." Lyra cut in before Riker could respond. "He has reasons. What else have you heard?" Finn's gaze lingered on Riker for another moment before he answered. "Darius has been making moves, allied with Clearwater Pack. Mutual defense agreement that's really just code for we'll split Blackridge's best hunting grounds between us. He's also been purging wolves he doesn't trust. Nothing violent, just reassigning them to distant patrols, keeping them away from the main compound. Smart, really. Looks like efficient reorganization instead of political elimination. Who's he keeping close?" "The council wolves who helped him. Marcus Cole as his new beta. A few younger wolves who see Darius as the strong leader they've been wanting." Finn refilled his mug. "But there's cracks." "Elena, the nursery keeper, she's been asking uncomfortable questions about Riker's disappearance. Garrett, old enforcer, he's not buying the story either. Few others. Not enough to matter politically, but enough to worry Darius if they start talking to each other." Riker's hands tightened on his mug. Elena and Garrett, just like he'd thought. Still loyal, or at least still questioning. That was something. "What about the pack as a whole?" Lyra asked. "How are they handling the transition?" "Nervous. Darius is competent but cold. Doesn't have Riker's touch with the younger wolves. Doesn't build the same kind of loyalty. He rules through efficiency and implied threat. It works, but it's not inspiring." Finn leaned back. "Give it another few months and you'll start seeing wolves leave. Head for other territories. Go lone. A pack held together by fear doesn't last." "Another few months," Riker muttered. "That's a long time." "Yes, it is." Finn's eyes locked onto him. But if someone were planning to challenge Darius, they'd want to wait until those cracks widened. Go in too early and the pack's still unified behind the new alpha. Wait too long and there's no pack left worth fighting for. Timing is everything. The old wolf knew. Maybe he'd known from the moment Riker walked through the door, but he was playing along, feeding information without demanding confirmation. Riker appreciated that. If someone were planning such a thing, Riker said carefully, what would you advise? Finn smiled, showing too many teeth for comfort. I'd advise they make damn sure they're not the same wolf who got thrown off a cliff in the first place. Because Darius isn't stupid. He'll be watching for Riker's return. He'll have contingencies. Going back as the old Alpha, all honor and trust, that's just asking to die twice. And if they weren't the same wolf, then I'd tell them to gather evidence of Darius's betrayal first. Something undeniable. Because you can't just show up and expect the pack to believe you over their current Alpha. You need proof. Witnesses. Something that makes them question everything they've been told. Finn stood, moved to one of his maps. There's a wolf in Black Ridge named Thomas Reed. He wasn't at the council that night, but he saw something afterward. Saw Darius and Marcus burning Riker's personal effects, destroying anything that might contradict their story. Thomas is scared, been keeping his mouth shut. But if someone gave him protection and a reason to talk, he trailed off meaningfully. Where can I find Thomas? Riker asked. East Patrol. Darius put him out there to keep him isolated. But the East Patrol rotates through the border station every 3 days. Next rotation's in 2 days. Finn marked a spot on the map. Right there. That's where you'd find him if you were looking. Riker studied the location. 2 days. He could make that. One more thing, Finn said, his voice dropping. Clearwater's Alpha. His name's Kane Morrison. He's planning to visit Black Ridge in about a week, formalize the alliance. Big ceremony, lots of witnesses. If you're going to make a move, that might be your moment. Kane won't like being associated with an Alpha who got his position through murder. Bad for his reputation. If you can prove what Darius did while Kane's there, it might fracture their alliance before it solidifies. It was a lot of information, too much to be free. What's this going to cost? Lyra asked, echoing Riker's thought. Finn turned back to them, and his expression was serious. I don't want your money or your trade goods. I want a promise. When this is over, whatever happens, Black Ridge Pack won't come looking for revenge against a neutral party who provided information to both sides. Both sides? Riker's wolf stirred. You've been talking to Darius too? I talk to everyone. That's how I stay neutral and alive. Darius sent someone asking about unusual wolves in the area, whether anyone had seen an Alpha-type survivor. I told them no, which was true at the time. He looked at Riker. Now it's not. But I won't tell them unless you give me reason to. I keep my deals, pup. You keep yours, and we'll get along fine. Riker stood, extended his hand. You have my word. No matter what happens, you stay neutral territory. Finn shook it. Good. Now get out. I've got other things to do than babysit runaway alphas. Outside, the sun was starting to set. Lyra led the way back toward her cabin, moving fast. He knew who I was, Riker said when they were out of earshot. Of course he did. Finn's not an idiot, but he won't tell anyone unless you break your word or it serves his interests. She jumped over a fallen log. The question is, what are you going to do with the information? Find Thomas. Get his testimony. Then figure out how to expose Darius during Kane's visit. That's a lot to accomplish in a week. Then I better get started. Lyra stopped, turned to face him. You're not ready. I'm healed. I'm trained. I have a plan. You have the beginning of a plan. You don't have allies. You don't have backup. And you're still thinking like this is about justice. Her voice was hard. This isn't about justice, Riker. It's about power. Darius has it, you don't. Until that changes, all the truth in the world won't matter. So what do you want me to do? Wait longer? Let him consolidate more? I want you to be smart. I want you to think 3 moves ahead instead of charging in like... She stopped herself, took a breath. You're not listening to me. I am listening. I just don't agree. Riker met her eyes. Every day I wait is another day Darius cements his control. Another day the wolves who might have questioned him learn to accept him. Another day my chance slips away. You taught me to see the board, Lyra. Well, I'm seeing it. And the board says I move now or lose everything. They stared at each other in the fading light. Finally, Lyra shook her head. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe, but I'm going to try anyway. Stubborn idiot, she muttered. But there was something almost fond in her voice. Fine. You want to do this the hard way. We'll do it the hard way. But you're taking me with you. You said you don't do pack politics. I don't. But I also don't let my patients commit suicide right after I patch them up. Bad for my reputation. She started walking again. We've got 2 days to plan how you approach Thomas without getting caught. And then we've got 5 days after that to build a case strong enough to take down an alpha in front of a witness who won't want to be associated with failure. So let's stop arguing and start working. Back at the cabin, they spread out Finn's information and started planning in earnest. Thomas Reed's patrol route, the border station's layout, Darius's likely security measures, Kane Morrison's expected arrival time, and the ceremony format. It was a complicated puzzle with a dozen ways to fail and maybe one way to succeed. But as Riker studied the pieces, feeling Lyra's presence beside him, he felt something he hadn't felt since before the cliff. Hope. Not the naive hope of the old alpha who'd trusted too easily, but the hard, sharp hope of a wolf who'd been broken down and built back up, who'd learned that survival required more than strength or honor. It required being willing to fight dirty when clean fighting wouldn't work. And if there was one thing these last weeks had taught him, it was that Riker Thorne could be very, very dirty when he needed to be. Thomas first, he said, marking the border station on their makeshift map. We get his testimony, recorded somehow. Then we need physical evidence, something that connects Darius to the attack. And finally, we need the right moment to present both, in front of enough witnesses that Darius can't just kill us and bury the truth. Lyra nodded slowly. It could work. A lot of things have to go right, but it could work. Then let's make sure they do. They worked through the night, refining the plan, accounting for contingencies, preparing for every possible thing that could go wrong. By dawn, they had something that looked almost viable. And 2 days later, as Riker crouched in the darkness near the east border station, watching Thomas Reed's patrol approach, he felt his heart hammer with more than just fear. This was it. The first move in reclaiming everything Darius had stolen. Thomas was younger than Riker remembered, maybe 25, with the lean build of a runner. He approached the station alone, as expected, carrying reports from the patrol. Riker waited until Thomas was inside, then moved. Silent, fast, using everything Lyra had taught him about stealth. He slipped through the back door of the station and caught Thomas before the young wolf could even shout. "Thomas," he whispered, hand over the wolf's mouth. "Don't scream. It's me. It's Riker." Thomas's eyes went wide. He tried to pull away, but Riker held firm. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because Finn told me you saw something the night I disappeared. Something Darius doesn't want anyone to know about." He slowly removed his hand. "I need you to tell me what you saw." Thomas was shaking. "You're dead. They said you were dead." "They lied. What did you see, Thomas?" The young wolf swallowed hard. "I saw them burning your things. Your father's journal, your maps, letters. Darius and Marcus laughing about it. Marcus said something about erasing the evidence, and Darius told him to shut up because I was nearby." He looked at Riker with something like awe. "I thought I'd imagined it, thought maybe I heard wrong. But you're really alive. I'm really alive. And I need you to testify to what you saw when the time comes. Can you do that?" Thomas hesitated. "Darius will kill me. Darius is going to be too busy defending himself to kill anyone, but I need witnesses. I need wolves brave enough to tell the truth." Riker released him, stepped back. "I'm not ordering you. I'm asking. Will you help me?" For a long moment, Thomas just stared. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I'll help. But you better make it count, Alpha, because if this goes wrong, we're both dead." "If it goes wrong," Riker said quietly, "we're dead anyway. At least this way we die trying." He slipped back into the night, leaving Thomas alone with his fear and his decision. One witness secured. Evidence still needed. 5 days until Kane Morrison's arrival. The clock was ticking, and Riker Thorne was done hiding. The hunt was on. But Riker quickly learned that hunting and being hunted felt uncomfortably similar. He made it back to Lyra's cabin before dawn, adrenaline still singing through his veins. Thomas's confession replayed in his mind, evidence of Darius burning records, destroying proof. It wasn't enough on its own, but it was a start. Lyra was waiting by the fire, her expression unreadable. "Well, he'll testify. Saw Darius and Marcus burning my father's journal and other documents. Heard Marcus mention erasing evidence. That's good. Not great, but good. She poured coffee into 2 mugs, handed him one. Now we need the physical evidence to back it up. Can't just be one scared wolf's word against an alpha's. Riker sipped the bitter brew, his mind already working through the problem. My father's journal. If Darius burned it, there might be remnants. Ashes, pages that didn't fully burn. It was leather-bound, thick, hard to destroy completely. Where would he have burned it? The ceremony hall, probably. There's a fire pit there used for rituals, private, secure, no one questioned smoke coming from it. Riker set down his mug. I need to get inside the main compound. That's suicide. Darius will have guards everywhere, wolves loyal to him watching every entrance. Lyra's voice was flat. You'd never make it past the perimeter. Then I don't go past the perimeter. I go under it. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Explain. There's an old drainage system my father had installed. Runs from the river through the compound and out the other side. It's narrow, mostly forgotten, but I used to explore it as a kid. If it's still open, I can get in without being seen. And if it's not open? If Darius sealed it? Then I find another way. Riker met her gaze. I'm going back there, Lyra. With or without a perfect plan. The question is whether you're still coming. She was quiet for a long moment, studying him. Finally, she nodded. You're not the same wolf I pulled out of that river. No, I'm not. Good. Because that wolf would have gotten us both killed. She stood, moved to a cabinet, and pulled out a leather pack. We go tonight. Get in, find what we can, get out. No heroics, no confrontations. This is reconnaissance, not revenge. You understand? I understand. But they both knew he was lying. The day dragged. Riker tried to rest, knowing he'd need his strength, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, he paced, planned, ran through every possible scenario. Lyra spent the time preparing supplies. Rope, knives, a small waterproof bag for any evidence they found. You're going to wear a path in my floor, she said without looking up from her work. Can't help it. Yes, you can. Sit down. Meditate like I taught you. When he didn't move, she looked up. Riker, you go in there with your nerves this shot. You'll make mistakes. Mistakes get you killed. So sit, breathe, center yourself. He wanted to argue, but she was right. Again. He sat, closed his eyes, and forced himself to focus on breathing. In and out, slow and steady. Let the nervous energy drain away, replaced by cold calculation. When he opened his eyes, the sun was setting and Lyra was watching him with something like approval. Better? Better. Then let's move. They traveled light and fast, sticking to the dense forest that bordered Black Ridge territory. Riker knew these woods intimately, every game trail, every hiding spot, every place the patrols typically avoided. It had been 6 weeks since he'd been here, but the land remembered him even if the wolves didn't. They reached the river just after full dark. The drainage inlet was exactly where Riker remembered, half hidden by overgrown brush and looking like it hadn't been touched in years. Perfect. How far does this go? Lyra whispered. About 300 yards. Opens into a grate behind the ceremony hall. Riker pulled aside the brush, revealing the dark mouth of the tunnel. Water trickled along the bottom, barely an inch deep. It'll be tight, but we'll fit. Lyra eyed the tunnel with obvious distaste. I'm starting to regret my life choices. You can still go back. And miss watching you do something stupid? Never. She pulled out a small flashlight. You first. I'll watch our backs. Riker shifted his pack to his chest and crawled into the tunnel. The walls pressed close on both sides, the ceiling barely a foot above his head. The smell of rust and stagnant water filled his nose. Behind him, he heard Lyra curse softly as she followed. They moved in silence, the only sound the scrape of their bodies against stone and the steady drip of water. Riker's wolf instinct screamed at the confinement, but he pushed them down. Control, always control. After what felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes, he saw light ahead. Faint, filtering through a metal grate. He paused, listening. Voices in the distance, but not close. The ceremony hall was rarely used except for formal occasions, which meant it should be empty tonight. Should be. Riker reached the grate and pushed. It didn't budge. He pushed harder, feeling the rust give slightly, but not enough. Behind him, Lyra whispered, Problem? Stuck. Give me a second. He braced his feet against the tunnel walls and shoved with everything he had. The grate groaned, shifted, and finally swung open with a screech that sounded deafening in the quiet. They both froze, waiting for shouts, for running footsteps. Nothing. Riker pulled himself through the opening into a small alcove behind the ceremony hall's main fire pit. The hall itself was dark and empty, lit only by moonlight streaming through high windows. The fire pit sat in the center, cold and dormant. Lyra emerged behind him, brushing rust and grime off her clothes. "How long do we have?" "Patrols circle every hour. We've got maybe 40 minutes before the next one comes close enough to hear us." Riker moved to the fire pit, knelt beside it. The ashes were old, weeks cold, but underneath the surface layer he could see darker patches where something had burned hot and long. He began sifting through the debris carefully, fingers searching for anything solid. Papers turned to ash would be useless, but leather, metal clasps, anything durable. His fingers closed on something hard. He pulled it out, brushed away the soot. A metal corner piece, the kind used to protect book bindings. His father's journal had 4 of them. "Got something," he whispered, holding it up. Lyra moved closer, examined it. "That's not enough. Could be from any book. It's got the pack symbol engraved. See?" He turned it so the moonlight caught the etched wolf head. "This was my father's. I'd know it anywhere." One piece of metal doesn't prove Darius burned the journal. No, but it's evidence he destroyed something important. Combined with Thomas's testimony, Riker stopped. His wolf senses screamed a warning half a second before he heard footsteps approaching the hall. Multiple sets, coming fast. "Hide!" Lyra hissed, pulling him toward the alcove. But it was too late. The main doors burst open and light flooded the hall. 4 wolves in human form, armed with silver knives. And leading them, wearing an expression of dark satisfaction, was Marcus Cole. "Well, well," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the empty hall. "The dead Alpha returns. Darius said you might be stupid enough to try something like this." Riker's heart hammered. This wasn't chance. This was planned. "How did you know?" "Thomas," Marcus smiled. "You really thought we wouldn't have someone watching him? He's been our canary in the mine since you disappeared, waiting to see if anyone would approach him. And you walked right into it." Betrayal again. But this time it tasted different, because Riker had half expected it. Trusted Thomas too much, too fast. Another mistake to add to the list. "Thomas told you everything?" Lyra asked, her voice calm despite the situation. "Everything. About your little chat, your plan to expose Darius during Kane's visit. Very ambitious." Marcus gestured and the 4 wolves spread out, cutting off escape routes. "But here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to come with us, quiet and compliant. Darius wants to have a conversation before he kills you properly this time." "And if we don't come quietly?" Riker asked, already knowing the answer. "Then we kill you here and tell everyone you tried to attack the ceremony hall. Either way, you're done." Marcus's smile widened. "Your choice." Riker glanced at Lyra. She gave the smallest shake of her head. "Don't fight, not here, not with these odds." But every instinct screamed to shift, to attack, to make them pay for every betrayal. Control. He needed control. "Fine," he said, raising his hands. "We'll come." Marcus looked almost disappointed. "Smart. Unexpected, but smart. Bind them." 2 wolves moved forward with rope. Riker let them tie his hands, watched them do the same to Lyra. The rope was silver-threaded, burning where it touched his skin. Not enough to cause real damage, but enough to weaken him. Another smart precaution. They were marched out of the ceremony hall and through the compound. Riker saw it all with fresh eyes, the pack members who turned away as he passed, not wanting to see. The younger wolves who didn't recognize him, who just saw a prisoner being led to judgment. The few older faces who did recognize him and couldn't hide their shock. Elena stood in a doorway, her hand over her mouth. Garrett watched from near the training grounds, his expression unreadable. Neither moved to help, neither spoke. Riker didn't expect them to. Fear was a powerful motivator, and Darius had clearly spent 6 weeks teaching the pack what happened to wolves who questioned him. They were brought to the Alpha's residence, what used to be Riker's home. The door opened to reveal Darius sitting behind the desk that had once belonged to Riker's father. The Beta, former Beta, looked comfortable there, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "Riker Thorne," Darius said, standing. "You have no idea how happy I am to see you. I've been worried you might actually be dead, and that would have been such a waste. Worried you couldn't finish the job? Worried I wouldn't get to watch you realize how completely you've lost. Darius moved around the desk. You came back thinking you could expose me, turn the pack against me. Very noble, very stupid. Did you really think I wouldn't prepare for this? You planted Thomas. I planted several wolves. Thomas, yes, but also a few others in strategic positions. Anyone you might have approached for help was either loyal to me or being watched. Darius circled them slowly. You trained them well, Riker. They're very good at playing both sides. Lyra spoke for the first time. So what now? You kill him again? How many times do you need to murder the same wolf before he stays dead? Darius's eyes shifted to her. And you must be the hermit healer, Lyra Cade. I've heard stories. You were supposed to be wiser than this. Wisdom is overrated. I prefer interesting. Well, this is certainly that. Darius turned back to Riker. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, Kane Morrison arrives to formalize our alliance. And during the ceremony, we're going to have a special event. The return of Riker Thorne, alive but broken. We'll tell the pack how you attacked the ceremony hall, tried to sabotage the alliance, and were captured while attempting to murder me in my sleep. They won't believe that. They'll believe what they're told because the alternative is questioning their new alpha, and we've already established what happens to wolves who do that. Darius smiled. Then, in front of Kane and the entire pack, you'll challenge me. A formal alpha challenge, witnessed and legitimate. I'll accept, we'll fight, and I'll kill you. Properly this time, in a way that leaves no doubt. Riker's mind raced. A public challenge, rigged from the start. Darius would have every advantage, time to prepare, home territory. A pack that already believed Riker was the villain. It was smart. Vicious, but smart. And if I refuse to challenge you, then you just disappear again permanently this time, and I tell the pack you ran like a coward. Either way, I win. Darius moved to the window, looked out at the compound. You were a decent alpha, Riker, just not ruthless enough. You wanted wolves to follow you out of love, but fear lasts longer than love. Fear is reliable. Fear is brittle, Lyra said. It cracks under pressure. Maybe, but love shatters even faster. Darius turned back. Take them to the holding cells. Keep them separated. I want Riker isolated until tomorrow. Let him think about all the ways this is going to end badly for him. Marcus and his wolves dragged them out. They were separated in the hallway. Lyra pulled left toward the guest quarters. Riker pulled right toward the cells beneath the main building. Their eyes met for a second, and Lyra's expression said what she couldn't speak aloud. Don't do anything stupid. But stupid was all Riker had left. The holding cell was exactly as he remembered. Small, dark, reinforced with silver bars. They shoved him inside and locked the door with a heavy click. Marcus leaned against the bars, watching him. You know what the funny part is? Marcus said. Some of us actually felt bad about it, throwing you off that cliff. You weren't a bad alpha, just a weak one. Weakness and mercy aren't the same thing, aren't they? You could have eliminated threats, could have ruled with a firmer hand, but you wanted to be loved, to be the good guy. Look where that got you. Marcus pushed off the bars. Darius understands what you never did. Power isn't about being fair. It's about being feared just enough that no one challenges you. Is that what you tell yourself? That you're building something better? I tell myself I'm on the winning side. That's all that matters. Marcus started to walk away, then paused. For what it's worth, I'll make your death quick tomorrow. Darius wants a show, but I can still give you that much. He left, footsteps echoing down the corridor. Riker was alone in the darkness with nothing but stone walls and silver bars and the reality of how badly he'd miscalculated. Thomas had been a plant. The whole thing was a trap. And he'd walked into it because he'd been desperate for hope, for allies, for some sign that the pack he'd built hadn't completely turned against him. Lyra had been right. He wasn't ready, wasn't smart enough, wasn't hard enough. But he was out of time to become those things. The hours dragged. Riker paced the cell, testing the bars, even though he knew they'd hold. His mind spun through scenarios, looking for an angle, a weakness, anything he could exploit. But Darius had planned this perfectly. Public execution disguised as honorable combat. The pack would see their old alpha fall and accept that Darius was the stronger wolf. Kane Morrison would witness order and strength, cementing the alliance. Everyone won except Riker. Footsteps approached around midnight, lighter than Marcus's, more cautious. A figure materialized from the shadows. Elena, the nursery keeper. She glanced around nervously before approaching the cell. "Alpha," she whispered. Riker moved to the bars. "Elena, you shouldn't be here." "I know, but I had to see for myself. You're really alive. For now. They're saying terrible things about you. That you abandoned the pack, attacked the ceremony hall, tried to murder Darius." Her voice shook. "I don't believe it. None of it makes sense." "It's not true. Darius and the council threw me off Raven's drop. They thought I was dead. They were wrong." Riker kept his voice low. "Elena, I need you to listen carefully. Can you get a message to someone for me?" "Who?" "Lyra. The woman they captured with me. They have her in the guest quarters. Tell her—" He stopped. What could Lyra do? She was as trapped as he was. "Tell her I'm sorry for dragging her into this." Elena's hands gripped the bars. "There has to be something we can do. Garrett and I, we've been talking, others too. We know something's wrong with Darius's story. If we spoke up, you'd be killed or exiled. Darius has consolidated power too well. The wolves who might have supported me are either dead, gone, or too scared to move." Riker met her eyes. "Promise me you'll keep your head down tomorrow. Don't try to help during the challenge. Just survive. Someone needs to remember what really happened." "Alpha, promise me, Elena." She hesitated, then nodded. "I promise." "Good. Now go before someone sees you." She disappeared back into the shadows, leaving Riker alone again. But something she'd said stuck in his mind. Others had been talking, questioning, not enough to matter politically, but enough to worry Darius, which meant the cracks were already there. Small, but present. And cracks could be widened. A plan began forming. Desperate, risky, probably doomed to fail. But better than just accepting death quietly. If he was going down, he'd make sure he damaged Darius on the way. Morning came gray and cold. Guards arrived to escort him out, and Riker noticed they were the same 4 from last night. Marcus's personal wolves, completely loyal. No chance of sympathy there. They brought him to the central clearing where pack gatherings were held. A massive space ringed by ancient trees, with a raised platform at one end. The entire pack was assembled. 60 wolves, give or take, all watching as Riker was marched to the center. He saw Lyra standing near the edge, flanked by guards. Their eyes met across the distance. On the platform sat Darius, wearing the Alpha's ceremonial furs that had once belonged to Riker's father. Next to him was a stranger, tall, broad-shouldered, with the confident bearing of an Alpha, Kane Morrison of Clearwater Pack, come to witness the alliance and, apparently, a bonus execution. Darius stood, and the crowd fell silent. "Wolves of Blackridge," he began, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Today we face a ghost. Riker Thorne, who we believe lost to the river, has returned. But he comes not in peace, not seeking to rejoin his pack. He comes as an enemy." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Riker saw shock, confusion, anger on different faces. Some wolves looked like they wanted to believe Darius. Others looked deeply uncomfortable. "Last night," Darius continued, "he broke into our ceremony hall, violated our sacred space, was captured attempting sabotage on the eve of our alliance with Clearwater Pack, and when questioned, he confessed to planning my assassination." "That's a lie," Riker said quietly, but his voice, trained through years of leading, carried just as far as Darius's. "I came back to expose the truth." The crowd went completely still. Darius's expression didn't change, but Riker saw the tightness around his eyes. What truth would that be? "That you and 11 others ambushed me at a false council meeting. That you threw me off Raven's drop and left me for dead. That you've spent 6 weeks rewriting history to make yourself the hero." Riker's voice grew stronger. "You burned my father's journal, destroyed evidence, planted false witnesses. Everything you've built is based on lies. Wild accusations from a desperate wolf." Darius turned to Kane. "You see what we're dealing with? A former Alpha who can't accept that his time has passed." But Kane was looking at Riker with sharp interest. "Let him speak. I want to hear what he has to say." It was a small opening, but Riker took it. "My father's journal contained records of pact decisions, treaties, alliances. evidence that would contradict Darius's version of events. That's why he burned it. But he couldn't destroy everything. Riker pulled the metal corner piece from his pocket. They'd searched him, but missed it pressed against his skin. This is from that journal. I found it in the ceremony hall fire pit last night, along with ashes of leather and paper. He held it up so the pack could see the engraved wolf symbol. Darius's face went very still. That proves nothing. Could be from any book. Could be. But isn't it interesting that you felt the need to burn books at all? Riker turned to address the pack directly. Ask yourselves, why would your new Alpha destroy historical records? What was he trying to hide? The murmurs grew louder, wolves turning to each other, questioning. Not convinced, not yet, but doubting. That was all Riker needed. Enough, Darius snapped. This is theater, distraction. You want to challenge my claim to leadership? Fine, I accept. We settle this the old way. Single combat. Winner leads the pack. There it was. The trap sprung exactly as Darius had planned, but Riker was ready for it. I accept your challenge, he said, but I have conditions. Darius laughed. You're in no position to make conditions. I'm in exactly that position. This is a formal Alpha challenge, witnessed by another pack's leader. Old law applies. And old law says the challenged has the right to set terms. Riker looked at Kane. Isn't that correct? Kane's expression was unreadable. He's right. What are your terms, Thorn? First, this is fought to submission, not death. The loser accepts exile. Second, if I win, there's a full investigation into what happened 6 weeks ago. Every wolf who participated testifies under oath. The truth comes out, whatever it is. And if you lose, Darius asked, then I accept exile quietly. No more accusations, no more disruption. I disappear, and you never hear from me again. It was a gamble. Riker was betting that Darius would be so confident in victory that he'd accept terms that limited the bloodshed. And more importantly, he was betting that Kane Morrison wouldn't want to be associated with an Alpha who murdered opponents when he didn't have to. Darius looked at Kane, reading the same calculation. If he refused and insisted on killing Riker, it would look weak, like he feared what an investigation might reveal. Fine, Darius said, to submission. But when you lose, you crawl out of this territory and never come back. Agreed. The platform was cleared. The pack formed a circle, creating the traditional fighting ring. Riker and Darius faced each other across 30 feet of bare earth, and Riker felt his wolf rising, eager, ready, but he held it back. One more card to play. Before we begin, Riker said loudly, I want the pack to know something. Darius told you I abandoned you, ran away. But I'm here. I came back even knowing I might die. Because this pack, my pack, deserves better than an Alpha who rules through lies and fear. Touching, Darius sneered. Are you done? Almost. One more thing. Riker turned to where Thomas stood in the crowd, looking pale and sick. Thomas Reed, tell them. Tell them what really happened when you saw me at the border station. Tell them how this was a trap from the beginning. Thomas's face went white. Every eye in the pack turned to him. Thomas stammered. I don't... Tell them, Riker repeated, his Alpha voice cracking like a whip. It was a risk. Thomas had betrayed him once already, but Riker was betting that the young wolf had a conscience buried somewhere under the fear. Thomas looked at Darius, then at Riker, then at the 60 wolves watching him. Something broke in his expression. He's right, Thomas said, his voice barely audible. It was a trap. Darius told me to wait, to see if anyone approached me about that night. When Riker did, I reported it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Alpha. The crowd erupted, wolves shouting, demanding answers. Kane Morrison leaned forward with intense interest, and Darius's carefully constructed narrative crumbled a little more. Traitor! Marcus lunged for Thomas, but Garrett stepped between them. The old enforcer's face was hard as stone. Let the boy speak, Garrett growled. Let's hear all of it. Yes, Kane said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Let's hear all of it. Thomas Reed, you will tell us everything you know. And then these two will fight. And if Thorn wins, we investigate. If Vane wins, the boy faces judgment for bearing false witness. Does everyone understand? There was nothing Darius could do but nod. And as Thomas began talking, haltingly at first, then faster, as he described seeing Darius burn documents, hearing Marcus talk about erasing evidence, being told to watch for anyone asking questions, Riker saw his chance. The pack was divided now, not convinced of Riker's innocence, but no longer certain of Darius's honesty. And a divided pack wouldn't fully support whoever won this fight, which meant whoever won had to win decisively enough to unite them through sheer dominance. Riker locked eyes with Darius across the ring. "Ready to finish this?" Darius asked. "I've been ready since the river." They shifted simultaneously. The change ripped through Riker, familiar and fierce. His wolf form emerged, dark gray fur, battle-scarred, lean from weeks of recovery but stronger than before. Across from him, Darius's black wolf was massive, well-fed, uninjured. They circled, each looking for an opening. Darius attacked first, all speed and power. He crashed into Riker's side, teeth seeking his throat. Riker twisted away, felt fangs scrape his shoulder instead of sinking into his neck. He snapped back, caught Darius's ear, tore. Blood spattered the ground. They broke apart, circled again. Darius was stronger, fresher. But Riker had spent 6 weeks learning to fight smarter. He let Darius come to him, dodged instead of blocking, looked for weaknesses in the bigger wolf's style. There! Darius dropped his left shoulder when he lunged. A tell. A opening. Next charge. Riker was ready. He stepped inside Darius's guard, went low, and drove his shoulder into that exposed left side. Felt ribs flex under the impact. Darius yelped and scrambled back. The pack roared, bloodlust rising. This was what they understood. Not politics, not accusations. Raw strength, tested in the oldest way. But Riker couldn't just win. He had to dominate, had to prove beyond doubt that he was the stronger wolf. He pressed the attack, driving Darius backward. Teeth found purchase in the black wolf's flank. Claws raked across shoulders. Darius fought back desperately, landing hits, drawing blood. But for every wound he gave, Riker gave 2 back. And slowly, painfully, Darius began to realize he was losing. The beta, the usurper, tried to fight dirty. Went for Riker's eyes, his throat, his hamstrings. But Lyra had taught Riker to expect that. Taught him to fight wolves who'd abandoned honor for survival. Riker caught Darius's front leg in his jaws and bit down, hard, bone-crunched. Darius howled and collapsed, 3-legged now, crippled. Riker could have finished it there. Could have gone for the throat, forced submission. But he remembered Elena's words. Others had been talking, questioning. The pack was fracturing. He needed to give them something to believe in, something beyond just being the strongest. He shifted back to human form, standing over Darius's wolf. Blood ran from a dozen wounds, but he didn't let it show. Behind him, he heard gasps. Most wolves didn't shift mid-fight. Too vulnerable. But Riker needed to speak. "Yield," he said. Darius's wolf snarled, tried to rise. Couldn't. "Yield," Riker repeated. "You've lost. Accept it." The black wolf's eyes blazed hatred, but slowly, painfully, Darius shifted back to human. He lay in the dirt, leg twisted at a wrong angle, breathing hard. "A yield," he gasped. The pack erupted in cheers and howls, but Riker didn't celebrate. He turned to Kane Morrison. "The challenge is done. I won. Now we investigate." Kane stood and the pack fell silent again. "So we shall. Darius Vane, you will submit to questioning. Every wolf present that night will testify. And if even half of what Riker Thorne claims is true, there will be consequences." Darius tried to sit up, failed. "This pack is mine. I earned it." "You stole it," Riker said quietly, "and now you'll answer for that." But before anyone could move, before guards could secure Darius, the former Alpha did something no one expected. He laughed. "You think you've won?" Darius said, blood bubbling on his lips. "You think this is over? You're right that I didn't work alone, but wrong about who my allies were." A chill ran down Riker's spine. "Kane Morrison didn't come here just to witness an alliance," Darius continued. "He came to ensure it went smoothly, ensure that Blackridge had the right kind of alpha, the kind who'd let Clearwater expand into our territory in exchange for support." Riker turned to look at Kane. The Clearwater Alpha's expression hadn't changed. "And if I won this fight?" Riker asked. "Then Kane would have challenged you himself. Fresh from this battle, wounded, exhausted, you'd never survive it. Darius or Kane, didn't matter which. Either way, Blackridge falls under Clearwater's control." The pack erupted in chaos, wolves shouting, shifting, preparing for battle. Because if Kane Morrison had come to conquer, they were surrounded by his forces. And sure enough, From the trees around the clearing, 24 Clearwater wolves emerged, armed, ready. Riker had won the challenge and walked straight into a war. Kane finally moved, descending from the platform. Clever Darius. Revealing this now. I'd planned to wait until after you killed Thorn, but I suppose this works too. You're making a mistake, Riker said, his voice deadly calm. My pack won't submit to conquest. Your pack is divided, leaderless, and exhausted from watching you two tear each other apart. They'll submit, or they'll die. Kane smiled. The choice is theirs, but either way, Blackridge becomes Clearwater territory tonight. Riker looked at his pack, at Elena's terrified face, at Garrett's rage, at the younger wolves who'd never seen real war. They were strong, but not ready for this. Not prepared for coordinated attack from fresh, organized fighters. He'd thought the trap was Darius's challenge, but the real trap had been much bigger all along. Riker stood bleeding in the center of the clearing, surrounded by his divided pack on one side and Kane Morrison's invasion force on the other, and felt something crystallize inside him. Not panic, not fear. Something colder and harder. The understanding that everything he'd been through, every lesson Lyra had beaten into him, had been preparing him for exactly this moment. 24 Clearwater wolves against 60 Blackridge. Numbers favored his pack, but Kane's wolves were coordinated, fresh, and unified under a leader they trusted. Riker's pack was fractured, exhausted from watching their former and current alphas tear each other apart, and uncertain who they should even be following. Kane seemed to read his thoughts. You're doing the math. Good. Smart wolves know when they're beaten. Math's never been my strong suit, Riker said. His wolf senses tracked every Clearwater position, every angle of attack. I always preferred history. History? Kane's smile was patronizing. What does that have to do with anything? History tells us that the last time someone tried to conquer Blackridge territory by force, they lost 18 wolves and gained nothing but scars. Riker's voice carried across the clearing, pitched for his pack to hear. My father led that defense. Some of you remember. Garrett, you were there. Elena, your mate died in that fight protecting the nursery. He saw recognition flicker across faces. Wolves standing straighter, remembering. That was 30 years ago, Kane said dismissively. Different pack, different time. Same territory, same principle. Blackridge doesn't surrender. Riker took a step forward, ignoring the pain from his wounds. You're making the same mistake they did, thinking numbers and surprise are enough. But you're forgetting something crucial. What's that? We're home. Riker's eyes swept across his pack. Every wolf here knows these woods, knows the hidden paths, the defensive positions, the places where attackers get funneled and slaughtered. You brought 24 fighters into terrain where we have every advantage. He turned back to Kane. So no, we won't submit. And if you attack, your wolves will die in woods they don't understand, fighting wolves who have everything to lose. Kane's expression hardened. Big talk from someone who can barely stand. Then test me. Challenge me yourself since that was your plan anyway. Single combat. Winner takes the territory. Riker spread his arms. Unless you're afraid you can't beat a wolf who's already fought today. It was a desperate bluff. Riker was exhausted, wounded, running on nothing but adrenaline and anger. Kane was fresh, probably trained, certainly no fool. A fight now would be suicide, but it would also buy time. Time for his pack to organize, to find their courage, to remember who they were. Kane studied him, weighing options. Around them, both packs waited. The clearing felt suspended in amber, everyone holding their breath. Then Lyra's voice cut through the tension. Or, she said, stepping into the center from where she'd been guarded at the edge, you could explain to all these witnesses why you're violating territorial law. Kane's eyes snapped to her. What? Territorial law. The old codes that govern pack disputes. Lyra's voice was calm, almost conversational, but Riker heard the steel underneath. Any alpha who wishes to claim new territory must first issue formal challenge to the existing alpha and wait 30 days for response. You've done neither. Which means this isn't conquest, it's invasion. An invasion allows neighboring packs to intervene on the victim's behalf. Kane's jaw clenched. Those codes are outdated. No one follows them anymore. You sure about that? Lyra pulled a small radio from her jacket. Where had she gotten that? And clicked it twice. Because I sent word to 3 neighboring packs 6 hours ago. told them Kane Morrison was planning to break territorial law in Blackridge, asked if they'd be interested in defending the old codes. From the forest, howls rose. Not Clearwater howls. Different voices, different packs, coming from 3 directions. Kane's face went pale. You're bluffing. Am I? You want to risk it? Lyra's smile was sharp as knives. The codes might be old, but they exist for a reason. They keep ambitious alphas from starting wars that spread like wildfire. You break them today, other packs break them tomorrow, and suddenly we're all fighting everyone. The packs I contacted understand that. They'll defend Blackridge just to preserve the system. Riker stared at her. When had she planned this? How had she? Of course. The radio had been in her pack when they'd been captured. She must have sent the signal before they'd been separated. Insurance, in case everything went wrong, which it had. Kane was doing his own calculations now. 24 wolves against 60 was one thing. 24 against 60 plus reinforcements from 3 other packs? That was a slaughter waiting to happen. This isn't over, Kane said tightly. Yeah, it is. Riker's voice was flat. You allied with Darius to steal my territory. That alliance dies with his exile. And if you ever set foot in Blackridge lands again without invitation, every pack in the region will know you can't be trusted to follow basic law. Your reputation will be worthless. The howls were getting closer. Kane could hear them too. His wolves shifted nervously, looking to their alpha for guidance. Finally, Kane raised his hand. Clearwater Pack, we're leaving. This was a misunderstanding. That what we're calling attempted conquest now? Garrett's voice was rough. Misunderstanding? We were invited, Kane snapped. By Darius Vane, your legitimate alpha at the time. We came to support an alliance. If that alliance is now void, we have no business here. He looked at Riker. But this isn't over, Thorne. Blackridge is weak, divided. One way or another, this territory will fall. Get out, Riker said quietly. Before those other packs arrive and I tell them you tried to invade anyway. Kane held his gaze for a long moment, then turned and whistled. His wolves melted back into the forest, disciplined and fast. Within minutes, they were gone, leaving only Blackridge Pack in the clearing, and one crippled former alpha bleeding in the dirt. Riker turned to Darius. The beta, former beta, had been forgotten during the confrontation with Kane, but he'd been listening to everything. His expression was bitter defeat. You heard Kane, Riker said. Your alliance is dead. Your plan failed. You have one chance to make this right. Make it right? Darius laughed, pained. How am I supposed to do that? Tell them everything, every detail of the conspiracy. Who helped, who knew, who stayed silent. Give the pack the truth, and I'll let you live. Refuse, and I'll finish what we started. Darius looked around the clearing, at the 60 wolves watching him, at Marcus, still standing near Thomas, looking sick, at the council members who'd helped throw Riker off the cliff, now realizing their plan had catastrophically failed. You want truth? Darius said. Fine. Here's truth. He talked for 20 minutes, described the conspiracy in detail, how he'd spent months building resentment against Riker's leadership, identifying wolves who valued expansion over stability, promising them greater hunting grounds and more power under his rule. How Marcus and 10 others had agreed to help, how they'd planned the ambush, chosen Raven's drop specifically because no one survived it, coordinated the story they'd tell the pack, and how Kane Morrison had approached him months before, offering support in exchange for territorial concessions, how Darius had sold out Blackridge's future for help securing his coup. With every word, the pack's mood shifted. Shock became anger. Anger became rage. Wolves who'd believed Darius's story about Riker's weakness now saw they'd been manipulated. Wolves who'd stayed quiet out of fear now found their voices. When Darius finished, the clearing was silent except for his ragged breathing. Riker looked at his pack. You heard him. You know the truth now. The question is what we do about it. Exile, Garrett said immediately. Him and everyone who helped. Get them out of Blackridge and make sure they never come back. Execute them, someone else shouted. They tried to murder our alpha. They sold our territory. They deserve death. The crowd rumbled agreement. Riker saw bloodlust rising, the pack's anger looking for an outlet. If he didn't control this, they'd tear Darius and the conspirators apart right here. Part of him wanted to let them, wanted to watch Darius pay in blood for every betrayal. But Lyra's words echoed in his mind. The wolf who controls himself controls the pack. No, Riker said, and his alpha voice cut through the noise like a blade. No executions, no mob justice. We're better than that. They tried to kill you, someone protested, and they failed. I'm alive, I'm here, and we're not going to become monsters just because they did monstrous things. Riker moved to stand over Darius. Exile. For all of them. Stripped of rank, forbidden from joining any neighboring pack. They live, but they live as rogues, with everyone knowing what they did. That's mercy they don't deserve, Marcus spat. It's not mercy. It's strategy. Riker faced the pack. We execute them. And Kane uses it as proof that Blackridge is unstable, violent, unsafe. He petitions the Territorial Council to intervene, gets other packs involved. But we exile them? We show we're strong enough to punish traitors without needing bloodshed. We show we're unified, controlled, better than our enemies think. He could see wolves processing this. The anger was still there, but calculation creeping in around the edges. They wanted revenge, but they also wanted stability. Safety. A pack that wouldn't tear itself apart. Those who follow Darius out, follow him now, Riker continued. Anyone who knew about the conspiracy, who helped, who stayed silent when they should have spoken. Leave now, and you get exile instead of execution. Stay and lie about it, and if I find out later, the punishment will be worse. It was a gamble, offering them a choice instead of just condemning them all. But Riker needed to know who was truly loyal and who'd just been following orders. Slowly, wolves began moving. Marcus first, limping to stand beside Darius, then two others from the council. A young wolf who'd been Darius's scout. Another who'd helped spread the story about Riker's weakness. 7 wolves total, 7 out of 60. Not as many as Riker had feared, which meant most of the pack had been kept in the dark, or had questioned but not acted. Anyone else? Riker waited. No one moved. Good. Then it's settled. You 7 have until sunset to be beyond our borders. Take nothing but what you can carry. And if any of you ever set foot in Blackridge territory again, the exile becomes a death sentence. Understand? Darius met his eyes. You're making a mistake. Showing weakness. No, I'm showing strength. The kind that doesn't need murder to prove itself. Riker gestured to Garrett. Escort them out. Make sure they actually leave. Garrett nodded, gathered a few loyal wolves, and herded the exiles toward the forest. Darius looked back once, his expression unreadable. Then they were gone, swallowed by the trees. Riker stood in the center of the clearing, facing what remained of his pack. 53 wolves, some watching him with hope, some with lingering doubt, some with cautious acceptance. Elena stepped forward. What happens now, Alpha? It was the first time anyone had called him that since he'd returned. The title hung in the air, fragile as glass. Now we rebuild, Riker said, but differently than before. I built this pack on trust, and that trust was betrayed. Not by all of you. Most of you didn't know what was happening. But the system that allowed it to happen, that let Darius poison the pack from within, that needs to change. How? Someone asked. Transparency. No more closed councils. No more decisions made in secret. Every wolf in this pack gets a voice in major decisions. Riker looked around the circle. That means more work for everyone. More meetings, more debate. But it also means no one can manipulate the system because the system is all of us together. That'll take time, Garrett observed. Slow everything down. Yes, but slow and careful is better than fast and betrayed. Riker moved to the platform where Darius had sat wearing his father's furs. He didn't climb it. Instead, he pulled the furs down, folded them carefully. These belong to my father. He earned them through 30 years of leadership. I'm not putting them on until I've earned them again. Until every wolf in this pack trusts me, not because I say they should, but because I've proven I deserve it. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. An alpha refusing the symbols of power until he'd legitimately regained them. It was unprecedented. You've already proven it, Elena said softly. You came back. You fought for us even knowing you might die. That's more than Darius ever did. I appreciate that, but trust has to be earned from everyone, not just some. Riker set the furs aside. So here's what happens next. We hold a proper council. Every wolf who wants to speak gets heard. We discuss what happened, what we want going forward, and whether you all actually want me as Alpha or if we need to consider other options. Other options? Someone said incredulously. You just fought off Darius and Cain both. Who else would lead? Maybe someone who wasn't gone for 6 weeks. Maybe someone who didn't let the conspiracy grow under their nose. Riker met their eyes steadily. I'm not the same Alpha I was. I'm harder now, less trusting. That might be what the pack needs, but it might not be what you want, so you get to choose. Lyra, still standing at the edge of the clearing, shook her head with something like respect. You really don't make anything easy on yourself, do you? Easy's what got me thrown off a cliff. Riker turned back to the pack. We start the council at sundown. Between now and then, anyone who has concerns, questions, or objections, come talk to me. I'll be in my... He paused. Where will I be exactly? I assume someone's taken my residence. It's been empty, Elena said. Darius moved into the Alpha's house instead. Said your quarters were too small. Of course he had. Darius had always been about symbols of power over actual power. Then I'll be in my old quarters. Anyone wants to talk? You know where to find me. The pack began dispersing, wolves breaking into small groups to discuss everything that had happened. Riker watched them go, feeling the exhaustion finally catch up with him. His wounds throbbed, his muscles screamed, and his head pounded from stress and blood loss. Lyra appeared at his elbow. You need medical attention. I need a lot of things. Medical attention is probably top 5. Come on, I've got supplies at the guest house. She steered him toward the building, and Riker was too tired to resist. That was smart, by the way. Offering them the choice makes them complicit in the decision instead of just following orders. Learned from the best. Don't credit me. I'd have told you to execute the lot of them and be done with it. She pushed open the door to the guest house. But your way might actually work better long term. If they choose you, they're invested. Can't blame you later when things get hard. Inside, she had him sit while she gathered medical supplies. The room was small but comfortable, clearly designed for visiting alphas or important guests. Darius must have put her here to keep her under guard, but not imprisoned. The radio, Riker said as she started cleaning his wounds. When did you send the signal? Right after they captured us. Clicked out a code to 3 pack leaders I know, told them there was trouble in Blackridge and to send reinforcements if they heard territorial law violations. She worked efficiently, her touch clinical. Wasn't sure they'd respond, wasn't sure they'd get the message in time, but figured it was worth trying. You saved us. You know that, right? Without that bluff, Cain would have attacked. It wasn't entirely a bluff. I really did send the message. Whether the packs actually responded or just howled back acknowledgement, I don't know, but Cain didn't know either. She paused, examining a deep gash on his shoulder. This needs stitches. Do what you need to do. She threaded a needle, and Riker gritted his teeth as she worked. The pain was sharp but manageable. He'd been through worse. What you said out there, Lyra said after a few stitches, about earning the alpha position instead of just taking it. You believe that? Yes. Even though you won it in combat? Even though old law says it's yours by right? Old law is part of what let Darius manipulate the pack, following tradition blindly, trusting in hierarchy without question. Riker winced as she pulled another stitch tight. I need something stronger than tradition. I need actual consent. Consent can be withdrawn. Yes, but it also has to be continually re-earned, which means I can't get lazy or complacent. Have to actually lead, not just rule. He watched her work. You think it's a mistake? I think it's risky. But so is everything else you've done, and somehow you're still alive. She tied off the stitches, moved to the next wound. You've changed, Riker. Not just harder, smarter. More aware of how wolves actually work instead of how you wish they worked. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Whether it's a compliment depends on what you do with it. They were quiet for a while, Lyra stitching and bandaging while Riker processed everything that had happened. He'd won the challenge, exposed Darius, survived Cain's invasion, reclaimed his pack. But the work was just beginning. A knock at the door interrupted them. Garrett's voice called, Alpha, you in there? Come in. The old enforcer entered, his expression troubled. We've got a situation, the Exiles. They're not leaving. Riker was on his feet immediately, ignoring Lyra's protest. What do you mean? Darius and the others, they've stopped about a mile from the compound, set up camp. They're saying they want to negotiate terms of exile. Garrett's jaw clenched. It's a stalling tactic. They're hoping Kane comes back or that the pack changes its mind or something, but they're not leaving. How many wolves do we have watching them? 4. Not enough if they decide to fight. Riker's mind raced. Darius was testing him already, seeing if the new alpha would enforce his decisions or back down when challenged. Get 10 more wolves, surround their camp. Tell Darius he has 1 hour to be beyond our borders, or the exile becomes permanent in a much more final way. You want us to execute them? Garrett asked. I want Darius to believe we will. He's gambling that I won't follow through, that I'm still too soft. Show him he's wrong. Garrett grinned, with pleasure. After he left, Lyra gave Riker a look. Still against executions? Yes, but I'm not against making them think I've changed my mind. Riker grabbed a shirt from the closet. Someone had left spare clothes here. Darius doesn't know the new me. Doesn't know what I learned in those 6 weeks. He's operating on old information. And you're going to use that. I'm going to use everything I can. Because Kane was right about one thing. Blackridge is vulnerable right now. Divided, weakened, uncertain. We need to look strong enough that no one else gets ideas about conquest. He headed for the door, but Lyra caught his arm. You're still wounded. Still exhausted. Maybe let someone else handle this. Can't. This is about more than just Darius. This is about showing the pack that I mean what I say. That exile means exile, and defiance has consequences. He covered her hand with his. But thank you. For everything. The training, the rescue, the radio trick. I literally wouldn't be alive without you. You're welcome. Try to stay that way. Riker left the guest house and made his way through the compound. Wolves stopped what they were doing to watch him pass. He could feel their eyes, their judgment, their uncertainty. They'd chosen to give him a chance at the council tonight, but every action between now and then would influence that choice. He found Garrett assembling the wolves at the compound's edge. 14 fighters, all grim-faced and ready. I'm coming with you, Riker said. Alpha, you're hurt. Let us handle this. That's exactly why I need to be there. Darius is testing whether I'm still too wounded to enforce my own decisions. I show up, show strength, and he knows his gamble failed. They moved through the forest in formation, Garrett's pack discipline showing. The exiles' camp was exactly where he'd said, a small clearing with a hastily built fire. Darius and his 6 followers sat around it, looking defiant. Riker's wolves surrounded the camp, cutting off escape routes. He walked into the center, ignoring the pain from his injuries. You were told to leave, he said quietly. Darius stood to face him. His broken leg was splinted, but he could barely put weight on it. We're discussing terms. There are no terms. Exile means you go, now. And if we refuse, then you die. Here. Tonight. And I'll make sure every pack in the region knows you were executed for treason, not for refusing exile. Your names will be blacklisted. No pack will take you in. Your families will carry the shame. It was a bluff. Riker had no intention of executing anyone. But Darius didn't know that. And the threat to family, to legacy, that hit harder than personal death for most wolves. Darius's confidence cracked. You've changed. Yes, and you're only just starting to understand how much. Riker took a step closer. You thought throwing me off a cliff would kill me. Instead, it freed me from the need to be merciful. You created the alpha you should have feared. So here's your one chance. Leave now, tonight, and live as rogues. Or stay and find out exactly how ruthless I can be. The clearing was silent except for the crackle of fire. Darius looked at his followers, saw the same fear in their eyes. They'd gambled on his confidence, but that confidence was evaporating fast. We'll go, Darius said finally. But this isn't over. You can't lead with fear and threats, Riker. Eventually, the pack will turn on you just like they turned on me. Maybe, but I'm not leading with fear. I'm leading with consequences. There's a difference. Riker gestured to the forest. Sunset's in 20 minutes. Be beyond the border by then. He turned and walked away, his wolves falling in behind him. He didn't look back to see if Darius followed the order. Showing doubt now would undermine everything. Back at the compound, Garrett confirmed what Riker hoped. They're moving, headed west toward neutral territory. Good. Keep watching until they're definitely gone. Then pull back the patrols. Will do, Alpha. That title again. Still felt strange, but less strange than it had this morning. The council started at sunset, just as Riker had promised. The entire pack gathered in the clearing, forming a large circle. No platform, no hierarchy, everyone equal. Riker stood in the center, but no higher than anyone else. "We're here to decide the future," he began. "Not just who leads, but how we lead. What kind of pack we want to be. I'll speak first, then anyone else who wants to. No interruptions, no challenges. Everyone gets heard." He took a breath, gathering his thoughts. 6 weeks ago, I was your alpha. I believed in trust, in family bonds, in building something better than just dominance and territory. And I failed. Not because those beliefs were wrong, but because I didn't see the cracks forming. Didn't see wolves who needed different things, who wanted different leadership. Darius exploited that blindness, and it nearly destroyed us all. He looked around the circle, making eye contact with as many wolves as possible. I came back different, harder, more skeptical, less willing to trust blindly. Some of you might not like that change, might prefer the old Riker who believed the best of everyone. But the old Riker is dead, thrown off Raven's drop along with his naive faith in wolf nature. "What replaced him?" Elena asked softly. "Someone who understands that leadership requires both strength and wisdom, that trust must be earned continually, not just assumed, that a pack isn't a family, it's a coalition of individuals who choose to work together for mutual benefit, and that choice has to be renewed, questioned, and proven every day." He paused. "If you choose me as alpha tonight, you're choosing that version, someone who will listen but not always agree, who will enforce decisions but explain the reasoning, who will protect you fiercely but expect you to pull your own weight. If that's not what you want, speak now. There's no shame in it." Silence. Then Garrett spoke. "I knew your father, served under him for 20 years. You're more like him than you realize, but also different. Better in some ways. He would have executed Darius and everyone who helped him. You chose Exile instead, showed mercy where he would have shown strength." "Mercy is strength," someone else said. "Killing's easy. Letting enemies live requires confidence." "Or weakness," another wolf countered. "Darius is out there, wounded and angry. What's to stop him from gathering rogues and attacking?" "Me," Riker said simply. "And every wolf loyal to Black Ridge. We'll be ready this time. No more blind trust, no more conspiracy. Everything open, everything visible." The debate continued for hours. Wolves arguing for and against Riker's leadership, discussing what they wanted from their pack, questioning every decision that had been made. It was messy, chaotic, sometimes heated, but it was also honest, raw, real. Finally, as the moon reached its peak, Elena stood. "I think we've talked enough. Time to decide. Everyone who supports Riker Thorne as Alpha, show yourselves." Wolves stood. Not all at once, not in perfect unison, but one by one, making the choice visible and individual. Garrett first, then Elena, then the younger wolves who'd seen Riker fight. Older wolves followed, some quickly, some reluctantly. When it was done, 48 wolves stood. 5 remained seated. "Anyone who doesn't support him want to speak?" Elena asked. One of the seated wolves, an older female named Sarah, stood. "I don't doubt your strength, Riker, but I don't know if I can trust you again. You were gone 6 weeks. We grieved you, moved on. Having you back, it's like a ghost returning. I need time to process that." Riker nodded. "That's fair. Take your time. The choice isn't permanent. If you decide later you can support me, or if those who stood decide they can't, speak up. This is ongoing." Sarah seemed surprised by that. "You're not requiring unanimous support?" "No, I'm requiring honesty. I'd rather know where I stand with everyone than pretend we're all united when we're not." The other 4 seated wolves exchanged glances. Then, slowly, 3 of them stood. Only one remained sitting, a young wolf who'd been recruited by Darius just before the coup. "I think you're weak," the young wolf said bluntly. "Exiling Darius instead of killing him, offering choices instead of giving orders. Alphas should be strong, decisive, feared." Then you're welcome to leave and find an alpha who leads that way," Riker said without anger. "No hard feelings. Different wolves want different things." The young wolf blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "You're just letting me go?" "I'm respecting your choice. Same as I'm asking you to respect mine." Riker held his gaze. "But understand, if you leave and later decide you made a mistake, coming back won't be automatic. You'll have to earn your way in again." After a long moment, the young wolf stood. I'll stay. For now. See how this plays out. Fair enough? Elena looked around the circle. Then it settled. 52 wolves support Riker Thorne as alpha of Blackridge. One is undecided. Does anyone contest this? Silence. Then, as the senior pack member present, I recognize Riker Thorne as our alpha. May he lead with wisdom and strength. The pack howled in unison, not celebratory, but acknowledgement. It wasn't the triumphant return Riker might have imagined in his darker moments during recovery, but it was real, earned, built on honesty instead of manipulation. Later, as the pack dispersed to their homes, Lyra found him sitting alone near the ceremony hall. How does it feel? She asked. Terrifying. Like I'm one mistake away from losing everything again. Good. That means you're paying attention. She sat beside him. The pack chose you, not because you forced them, but because they wanted to. That's power you can actually build on. I hope so. Riker looked up at the stars. Kane's still out there, probably planning another attempt. And there are other threats I don't even know about yet. There always will be. That's leadership. Lyra was quiet for a moment. What will you do about Darius? He's gone, but wolves like that don't just disappear. I'll keep watch. Set patrols on the borders, build relationships with neighboring packs so they'll warn us if he's gathering forces. Riker smiled grimly. And I'll remember that mercy doesn't mean stupidity. If he comes back, I won't hesitate the second time. Now you're learning. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the moon cross the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. One of the border patrols signaling all clear. The sound echoed through the forest, answered by others, creating a web of communication across the territory. His pack, his responsibility. Riker Thorne had been thrown off a cliff, left for dead, and crawled back from the edge of oblivion. He'd lost his naive faith in wolf nature, his trust in easy bonds, his belief that honor alone was enough. But he'd gained something harder and more valuable. The understanding that real strength came from honest choice, that real power came from earned respect, and that the wolf who controlled himself truly could control the pack. The broken alpha was dead, but the one who rose from the river was just beginning to understand what he could become. The broken alpha was dead, but the one who rose from the river was just beginning to understand what he could become. 3 weeks passed in careful rebuilding. Riker established the new council system, open meetings twice weekly where any wolf could voice concerns or propose changes. It was slow, sometimes frustrating, but it worked. Wolves who'd been silent under Darius's rule found their voices. Decisions that once took minutes now took hours of debate. But those decisions held because everyone had bought into them. The pack was healing, not quickly, not perfectly, but honestly. Then the messenger arrived. Riker was overseeing training exercises with the younger wolves when Garrett approached, his expression grave. Behind him walked a wolf Riker didn't recognize, lean, scarred, with the wary posture of someone who'd survived too many fights. Alpha, Garrett said quietly. This is Victor. He's from the Clearwater Pack. Says he needs to speak with you. Alone. Every instinct screamed trap. But Riker had learned to separate instinct from strategy. Search him for weapons first, then bring him to my quarters. 10 minutes later, Victor sat across from Riker in the small room that served as his office. Lyra stood in the corner, her presence both support and insurance. If this went wrong, she'd get word out. You've got 5 minutes, Riker said. Talk. Victor took a breath. Kane Morrison is planning another attack. Bigger this time. He's been gathering allies, not just Clearwater wolves, but rogues, mercenaries, wolves from packs that owe him favors. He's planning to hit Blackridge in 2 weeks during the full moon gathering. Why tell me? You're Clearwater Pack. Was Clearwater Pack. Victor's jaw clenched. Kane killed my brother 3 days ago. Silas questioned the attack plan, said it violated too many territorial laws that other packs would retaliate. Kane made an example of him, called it treason. His hands shook. So I'm here. Figured the enemy of my enemy might want information. Riker studied him, looking for deception. Saw only grief and rage, emotions he knew intimately. How many wolves is Kane bringing? 40, maybe 50. The full moon gathering is when Blackridge wolves will be distracted with ceremony. He's counting on that. And you think telling me this makes up for your brother questioning too late? Where was Silas when Cain first allied with Darius? Victor's face hardened. Following orders, same as I was. Same as most wolves do when their alpha tells them something. He leaned forward. But you're right to not trust me. I wouldn't trust me either. So here's what I'll do. I'll stay. Let you hold me as insurance. If Cain doesn't attack like I said, kill me. If he does, I fight with you against him. It was either genuine or an extremely elaborate trap. Riker looked at Lyra. She gave the smallest nod. Her instinct said Victor was telling the truth. Garrett, Riker called. The enforcer entered immediately. Take Victor to the guest quarters. Post guards. He's not a prisoner, but he's not free to wander either. After Victor was escorted out, Lyra moved to the window. You believe him? His grief was real. Whether the information is accurate, that's another question. Riker pulled out a map of the territory. But we can't ignore it. If Cain is planning an attack, we need to be ready. 50 wolves against 52. Better odds than last time, but still risky. Not if we fight smart instead of fair. Riker traced defensive positions on the map. The full moon gathering happens in the northern clearing. There are 3 approach routes Cain could use. If we fortify those, set up ambush points, we turn his advantage into a killing field. You're talking about violating the sacred gathering. No pack fights during the full moon. No pack used to violate territorial law either. Cain's already broken tradition. I'm just adapting to the new rules. Riker looked up. Besides, we won't fight during the ceremony. We'll fight before he ever reaches it. Over the next week, Riker prepared his pack without telling them exactly why. Increased patrols, combat drills, strategic positioning of supplies and weapons. He framed it as general security improvements, rebuilding after Darius's disruption. Most wolves accepted the explanation, but Garrett knew better. You're preparing for war. I'm preparing for the possibility of war. There's a difference. And if Victor's lying, if this is Cain's way of making us waste resources on defenses we don't need, then we're more prepared than we were before. Not a waste. Riker marked another position on the map. But I don't think he's lying. Cain's ego was damaged when he had to retreat. Ambitious alphas don't let that stand. Sarah, the older wolf who'd been hesitant to support Riker, approached him during the evening meal. Alpha, there are rumors, wolves saying you're expecting an attack. Is it true? Riker considered lying, decided against it. Transparency was the foundation he'd built. I have intelligence suggesting Cain Morrison might try something during the full moon gathering. I'm taking precautions. Should we cancel the gathering? No. That shows weakness, fear. We proceed as normal, but with extra security. He met her eyes. If it makes you uncomfortable, you're welcome to stay at the compound instead of attending. Sarah bristled. I've attended every full moon gathering for 30 years. I'm not hiding now. She paused. But I appreciate you telling me the truth. Darius would have kept it secret, then blamed us when things went wrong. After she left, Riker allowed himself a small smile. Trust, slowly being rebuilt. The day before the full moon, Lyra pulled him aside. I need to tell you something. Her tone made his wolf tense. What? The packs I contacted with the radio. They did respond, sent representatives to observe what's happening in Blackridge. They've been watching from the borders for 2 weeks. She held up a hand before he could explode. I didn't tell you because you had enough to deal with. But they're here now, and they want to meet, formally. How many packs? 3. Ironwood, Silverpine, and Redstone. Their representatives are waiting at the eastern border. She watched him carefully. They want to discuss Cain Morrison and territorial law enforcement. This changed everything. If 3 packs were willing to support Blackridge against Clearwater aggression, the balance of power shifted dramatically. Riker grabbed his coat. Take me to them. The meeting happened in a neutral clearing just beyond Blackridge borders. 3 wolves waited, 2 males and a female, each wearing the subtle markers of their pack affiliation. The woman spoke first. I'm Alpha Mira of Ironwood Territory. These are Alpha Chen of Silverpine and Beta Samuel representing Redstone. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. We received warnings from Lyra Cade about potential territorial law violations. We've been observing. We've seen enough to concern us. Concern you how? Riker asked. Cain Morrison has been recruiting aggressively, offering territory shares, hunting rights, protection in exchange for wolves willing to fight. Chen's voice was clipped, precise. He's building a coalition, but not through proper channels. No formal alliances, no treaty negotiations, just promises and threats. That violates a dozen territorial codes, Samuel added, creates instability. If we let him conquer Blackridge through force, he'll try the same with other packs. Mira stepped closer. So we're here to offer support. Not because we particularly care about Blackridge, but because we care about maintaining order. Kane represents chaos. You represent stability, however imperfect. It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but it was practical. Riker could work with practical. What kind of support? Information first. We've been tracking Kane's movements. He's gathering his force at a staging ground 15 miles west of here. Plans to move at dawn tomorrow. Hit your gathering while it's underway. Mira pulled out a small sketch. 53 wolves. Mix of Clearwater, rogues, and mercenaries. He's paying well. How do you know this? Because some of the wolves he approached came to us instead, told us what he was planning. Chen's smile was cold. Mercenaries are loyal to coin, not alphas. We offered better coin for information. And the second kind of support? Witnesses. We'll position wolves at your borders during the full moon. If Kane attacks, we witness it. Document it. Present evidence to the Territorial Council. Mira's expression was serious. That won't help you in the moment. You'll still have to fight. But afterward, it ensures Kane faces consequences beyond just losing the battle. And if I lose? Then we document that Blackridge fell due to outside aggression, and we petition the Council to deny Kane's claim on the territory, force him to withdraw, or face combined opposition. Samuel shrugged. Either way, he doesn't get what he wants without cost. It was more than Riker had hoped for. What do you want in return? Precedent, Mira said simply. We wanted to establish that territorial law still matters, that alphas can't just conquer whoever they want through force. We're willing to invest in that principle now so we don't have to fight for it later when it's our territories threatened. Riker extended his hand. Then we have a deal. They shook, and Riker felt the weight of it. This wasn't just about Blackridge anymore. This was about the larger structure, the codes that kept packed territories from devolving into constant warfare. Back at the compound, he called an emergency council. Every wolf gathered in the clearing as sunset painted the sky orange and red. Kane Morrison is coming, Riker said without preamble. Tomorrow at dawn, 53 wolves. His goal is to attack during the full moon gathering while we're distracted and claim our territory through conquest. The pack erupted in angry shouts. Riker let them vent for a moment, then raised his hand for silence. We have two choices: cancel the gathering, pull back to the compound, and defend from fortified positions, or proceed with the gathering and turn his ambush against him. He looked around the circle. I'm recommending the second option. That's insane, someone protested. The gathering site has no defenses. It has the forest, the terrain, and the element of surprise. Kane thinks we don't know he's coming. Riker gestured to Garrett. Show them. Garrett unrolled the map they'd been working on. 3 approach routes to the northern clearing. We fortify each one with hidden positions. When Kane's forces approach, we hit them from the sides and rear. Divide their numbers. Force them to fight in terrain they don't know against wolves who've trained there for years. We use our knowledge against their strength, Riker continued. And we have witnesses from 3 neighboring packs who'll document everything. Win or lose, Kane faces consequences. Elena spoke up. What about the young wolves, the elders? We can't put everyone in combat. We don't. Non-combatants stay at the compound with a defensive guard. 20 wolves to protect them, 32 to fight. We're outnumbered, but we'll be fighting from advantage. And if we lose? Sarah asked quietly. Then the other packs step in, deny Kane's claim, and ensure Blackridge isn't simply erased from existence. Our pack survives even if our territory changes hands. Riker met her eyes. But I don't plan to lose. The council voted. 38 in favor of the plan, 14 against. Not unanimous, but enough. That night, Riker couldn't sleep. He walked the compound, checking preparations, talking to wolves on guard duty, trying to quiet the fear that he was leading his pack into slaughter. He found Lyra sitting on a ridge overlooking the valley, watching the stars. Can't sleep either? He asked, settling beside her. Sleep is for people without impending battles. She didn't look at him. You know this is going to be bad, right? Even with preparation, people will die. I know. Can you live with that? Making calls that get wolves killed. Riker was quiet for a long moment. No, but I can live with making calls that give wolves a chance to fight for something worth protecting. Darius would have surrendered or run. I'm giving them the option to stand. You're giving them the option to die. Same thing sometimes. He looked at her. You don't have to stay. This isn't your pack, isn't your fight. Lyra snorted. I've come this far. Be ashamed to miss the ending. Might not be the ending you want. Rarely is. She finally looked at him. But for what it's worth, you've done well. Better than I expected. The Alpha, who washed up on my riverbank, would have handled this completely differently. Would he have handled it better? No, he would have lost. Tried to negotiate, believe Kane's promises, get stabbed in the back again. She paused. You're harder now. That cost you something. That softness, that faith in wolf nature. But it bought you survival. Sometimes that's the trade you make. Dawn came cold and gray. The full moon had already set, but its influence lingered in the restless energy of every wolf. Combat teams assembled quietly, moving through pre-dawn darkness to their assigned positions. Non-combatants were secured in the compound's most defensible building with 20 guards. Riker checked each position personally, making sure everyone understood their role. Garrett commanded the northern ambush point. Elena, surprisingly, had volunteered to lead the eastern position. Turned out she'd been a fighter before becoming nursery keeper. Riker took the western approach himself, with 12 wolves, including Lyra. They waited in the cold darkness, camouflaged in the underbrush, while the sky slowly lightened. Riker's wolf senses tracked everything, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of morning birds, the nervous breathing of wolves waiting for violence. Then, voices. Coming from the west, Kane's forces, moving through the forest with the confidence of wolves who thought they had the advantage. Riker counted them as they passed. 15 in this group. Kane had split his force to hit all 3 approaches simultaneously. Smart, but it also divided his strength. He waited until half the wolves had passed the ambush point, then gave the signal. His pack erupted from concealment. Teeth and claws found targets before Kane's wolves even realized they were under attack. The forest erupted in snarls, howls, the wet sounds of combat. Riker shifted mid-lunge, his wolf form tackling a massive gray wolf who had to be one of Kane's lieutenants. They rolled, snapping at each other's throats. Riker used every trick Lyra had taught him, fought dirty, went for vulnerable spots, used terrain advantages. He caught the gray wolf's back leg in his jaws and twisted, felt ligaments tear. The wolf yelped and limped away, out of the fight. Around him, his wolves were holding. Not winning easily, but holding. Kane's forces were better trained than he'd feared, but they were also fighting in unfamiliar territory against wolves defending their home. Then howls rose from the north and east. Garrett and Elena's positions engaging their portions of Kane's force. The plan was working. Kane's unified attack had become 3 separate fights, and Blackridge was winning 2 of them, but the western approach was grinding to a stalemate. Kane's wolves regrouped, started using coordinated tactics. Riker saw one of his younger wolves go down, bleeding. Saw another overwhelmed by 2 attackers. Then Lyra was there, in her wolf form, silver gray and deadly. She moved like water, finding gaps in Kane's formations, striking and retreating before anyone could retaliate. Her combat style was nothing like pack fighting. It was something older, more refined. The tide turned. Kane's western force broke, wolves retreating into the forest. Riker let them go. Chasing would spread his forces too thin. Regroup, he barked. Check wounded, then move to support the north position. But when they reached the northern approach, they found Garrett's pack standing victorious over scattered Clearwater wolves. The old enforcer was bleeding from a dozen wounds, but grinning. Kane himself was with this group, Garrett reported. We drove him off. He's running west with maybe 10 wolves. The east? Elena's holding, but she needs support. Kane's eastern force is the biggest, 20 wolves. They ran through the forest, following the sounds of combat. Burst into the eastern approach clearing to find Elena's pack surrounded, fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers. Riker's reinforcements hit the Clearwater wolves from behind like an avalanche. The enemy formation collapsed, wolves scrambling to defend 2 fronts. Elena's pack pushed forward, and suddenly Kane's eastern force was the one surrounded. One of Kane's wolves, larger than the rest, shifted to human form. We yield! We yield! The fighting stopped raggedly, wolves backing away from each other, breathing hard. The clearing was littered with wounded from both sides. Riker did a quick count. 3 of his pack dead, 7 wounded badly. Kane's forces had lost more, at least 8 dead, twice that injured. But they'd held. Black Ridge had held. Riker shifted to human form, ignoring his nakedness and the cold. "Where's Kane?" The wolf who'd surrendered, also in human form now, spat blood. "He ran west with his personal guard, left us to die." "Some alpha," Garrett growled. "He's your alpha," Riker said. "Or was. What's your name?" "Derek. Was his second beta." The wolf's expression was bitter. "He said this would be easy, said Blackridge was weak, divided. He lied. He believed his own propaganda." Riker looked at the scattered Clearwater wolves. "Here's what happens next. You're going to gather your dead and wounded. You're going to return to Clearwater territory. And you're going to tell everyone exactly what happened here. That Kane Morrison violated territorial law, led you into an ambush, and abandoned you when the fight turned bad. He'll kill us for that. Probably. But the alternative is I hold you all as prisoners and let the Territorial Council decide your fate. Your choice." Riker's voice was hard. "You followed Kane into illegal conquest. That makes you complicit. The only reason I'm offering mercy is because he abandoned you, and that deserves its own punishment." Derek looked at the other Clearwater wolves, saw the same calculation on their faces. "We'll do it. Tell everyone. But Kane has loyalists. They might not believe us. They will when 3 other packs present evidence of his territorial law violations to the Council." Riker gestured to the forest edge, where he knew Mira's observers were watching. This battle was witnessed, documented. Kane's finished, whether he realizes it yet or not. As the Clearwater wolves gathered their casualties and limped away, Riker's pack began their own grim work. 3 dead. Young wolves who'd barely begun their lives. 7 wounded seriously enough to need Lyra's skills. Dozens with minor injuries. The cost of victory. Elena approached, bleeding from a gash on her shoulder but standing straight. "We held, Alpha. We actually held." "You held," Riker corrected. "Your position had the worst of it. If you'd broken, we'd have lost everything. I remembered what you said, about fighting for something worth protecting." She looked around the clearing. "This is worth it, all of it." That afternoon, while Lyra tended the wounded and the pack secured the borders, Alpha Mira approached with her observers. "Impressive defense. Unconventional tactics, but effective." "Unconventional is all I had to work with. Kane Morrison fled west. Our scouts tracked him to neutral territory." Mira's expression was thoughtful. "He's gathering the remains of his force. Maybe 15 wolves total. Not enough to threaten anyone, but enough to be a problem." "What happens now?" "Now we present evidence to the Territorial Council. Kane violated multiple laws. Unsanctioned territory invasion, coalition building without proper treaties, abandonment of his pack in combat. The Council will strip his alpha status, possibly exile him from the region entirely." She paused. "Clearwater pack will need new leadership. Any interest in claiming it?" Riker almost laughed. "I've got my hands full with one pack. They can choose their own alpha." "Smart answer. Conquering makes you the same as Kane." Mira extended her hand. "The Council will want your testimony. In 2 weeks, at the neutral gathering grounds. You'll speak about what happened here, what you observed. Your credibility matters." "I'll be there." After the visiting packs left, Riker finally allowed himself to feel the exhaustion. He'd been running on adrenaline and fear for hours. Now it crashed over him like a wave. He found a quiet spot near the ceremony hall and sat, just breathing. They'd won. Not perfectly, not without cost, but decisively. Kane was broken, fleeing. The territorial law held. Black Ridge remained independent. Footsteps approached. Garrett, carrying something wrapped in cloth. "Found this in your father's things," the old enforcer said, handing it over. "Figured now's the right time." Riker unwrapped it. The ceremonial furs. The ones he'd refused to wear until he'd earned them. They smelled of cedar and memory. "You earned them," Garrett said simply. "Led us through impossible odds, made decisions that saved the pack. Your father would be proud." Riker ran his fingers over the fur. He would have fought differently. Probably lost fewer wolves. Maybe, but he also would have trusted Darius, never seen the betrayal coming. You learned from that. Adapted. Garrett's hand landed on his shoulder. "You're not your father. You're something new. That's not a bad thing." That evening, the pack gathered for an impromptu ceremony. Not the full moon ritual they'd planned, but something simpler, honoring the dead, celebrating the living, acknowledging what they'd survived together. Riker wore the furs they fit better than he'd expected. He spoke briefly, thanking the wolves who'd fought, mourning those who'd fallen, recognizing the courage it took to stand against overwhelming force. Then he did something no Alpha had done in Blackridge history. He opened the floor for others to speak. Wolf after wolf stood, sharing their experience of the battle, their fears, their triumphs. Sarah talked about overcoming her doubt in Riker's leadership. Elena described the moment she'd almost broken, then found strength in remembering why they fought. Even the young wolf who'd been skeptical spoke, admitting he'd been wrong about strength requiring cruelty. It wasn't a perfect ceremony. Wolves interrupted each other, argued about details, got emotional and raw. But it was honest, real. A pack not built on blind loyalty, but conscious choice. Later, as the gathering dispersed, Lara found Riker alone again. "You did it," she said quietly. "Took a broken pack and made it whole. Different than before, but whole. We did it. I wouldn't have survived without you. True. But you took what I taught you and made it your own. That's not nothing." She looked out at the compound, where wolves were heading home, talking animatedly about the battle. "What happens now? You've got your pack back, defeated your enemies, established your authority. What's left?" Riker considered. "Building something that lasts. Not just until the next crisis, but generations. Teaching younger wolves what I learned, how to lead without cruelty, how to trust without being blind, how to be strong without being brutal." That's ambitious. So was surviving Raven's drop. He smiled. "I'm starting to think ambitious is my default setting." "What about me?" Lara asked. "I've been here over a month, probably time I headed back to my hermit life." The thought of her leaving created an unexpected hollow in Riker's chest. "You could stay. Pack could use a healer who actually knows what she's doing, and someone who's not afraid to tell the Alpha when he's being an idiot." "I don't do packs." "Neither did I, for a while. Then I built one that actually worked." He met her eyes. "Not asking you to join as a regular pack member, asking if you'd stay as whatever you want to be. Advisor, healer, pain in my ass. Your choice." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "I'll think about it, but I'm not making promises. I wouldn't want you any other way." 2 weeks later, Riker stood before the Territorial Council at the neutral grounds. 20 Alphas and their representatives, the leaders of every pack in the region. He gave testimony about Kane's invasion, Darius's betrayal, the battle at Blackridge. He spoke plainly, without embellishment or excuse. Let the facts stand for themselves. The council deliberated for less than an hour. Kane Morrison was stripped of his Alpha status, exiled from the region for 20 years. Clearwater Pack was placed under temporary council oversight until they could elect new leadership through proper channels, and Blackridge was officially recognized as an independent territory under Riker Thorne's leadership. Mira approached him after the council adjourned. "Congratulations, you're legitimate now." "I was legitimate before. You were surviving. Now you're established. Different thing." She studied him. "You impressed people today. Not easy to do. Most Alphas are either too proud or too humble. You managed honest, which is rare. Honest is all I know how to be anymore. Keep that. It'll serve you well." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. There's talk of reforming the territorial laws, updating them for modern times. The council wants younger Alphas involved, people who understand how things are changing. Interested?" It would mean more responsibility, more time away from his pack, more politics. Everything Riker had learned to hate. But it would also mean building something larger than just Blackridge, creating systems that prevented what happened to him from happening to other packs. "I'm interested," he said. Back at Blackridge, life settled into new patterns. The open council system matured, wolves getting better at productive debate. Defenses were strengthened, but not to the point of isolation. Trade routes were established with ironwood and silverpine. Young wolves were trained not just in combat, but in the history of territorial law, the reasons behind traditions. Lyra stayed. She never officially joined the pack, but she built a small cabin on the edge of the compound and tended to anyone who needed healing. She and Riker fell into an easy partnership, not romantic exactly, but something deeper than friendship. Two wolves who'd seen too much to be naive, choosing to build something anyway. 3 months after the battle, Sarah approached Riker with a request. My daughter is coming of age. She wants to join the pack, but she's nervous. Thinks you'll reject her because I hesitated to support you. Why would I do that? Because alphas hold grudges. At least they used to. Riker smiled. Tell your daughter she's welcome. No grudges, no hesitation. She's judged on who she is, not who her mother doubted. Sarah's eyes welled. Thank you, Alpha. Thank you for giving me a chance when you had every reason not to. 6 months after the battle, Riker stood on the ridge overlooking Black Ridge territory, the same place he'd stood with Lyra before Kane's attack. But everything looked different now. The pack wasn't bigger than before. They'd lost wolves to death and exile. But it was stronger, more honest, more resilient. His father's vision had been building a pack through trust and honor. Darius's vision had been building through fear and domination. Riker's vision was something in between, building through earned respect, transparent leadership, and the understanding that strength came from choice, not coercion. It wasn't perfect. There were still disputes, still wolves who disagreed with his decisions, still threats on the borders. But it was real, sustainable, worth protecting. Lyra joined him on the ridge, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Thinking deep thoughts? Thinking about how different things could have been. If Darius had succeeded, if I died in that river, if Kane had won. But you didn't die. You survived, and you built something from the wreckage. She handed him a cup. That's worth something. Is it enough? That's the wrong question. It's never enough. There's always more work, more threats, more problems. The question is whether what you built can outlast you, whether the systems and values will survive when you're gone. Riker sipped the coffee, considering. I think they will. The open council, the transparency, the earned trust, those are bigger than any one alpha. Even if I disappeared tomorrow, the pack would continue.
Then you succeeded where most fail. Lyra looked out at the valley. You know, when I pulled you out of that river, I didn't think you'd make it. You were too broken, too wounded, but you surprised me. How? By not becoming bitter, by taking all that betrayal and pain and using it to build something better instead of just getting revenge. She glanced at him. Most wolves in your position would have killed everyone who wronged them and ruled through terror. You chose differently. I almost didn't. There were moments when killing them all seemed easier. But you didn't. That's what matters. She paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad I stayed. This place, this pack, it's become something worth being part of, even for a hermit like me. They stood in comfortable silence as the sun set over Black Ridge territory. Somewhere below, wolves were going about their evening routines, training, eating, talking, living, building lives in a place that had almost been destroyed but survived through collective choice. Riker thought about the alpha he'd been, trusting, idealistic, naive. That wolf was dead, thrown off Raven's drop along with his illusions. But what emerged from the river was something harder and wiser. Someone who understood that real strength came from admitting weakness, real power came from sharing it, and real leadership came from earning it every single day. The broken alpha was dead, but the one who rose from the river had built something that would outlast them all, a pack not bound by fear or blind loyalty, but by honest choice and mutual respect. And in the end, that was the only kind of pack worth leading. Riker Thorne had been betrayed, murdered, abandoned, and reborn. He'd lost his naive faith and gained hard wisdom. He'd been the alpha who trusted too much, and became the alpha who trusted wisely. His pack was smaller than before, but stronger. His territory was challenged but secure. His leadership was questioned but earned. And standing on that ridge, watching his wolves live free and safe in the territory they'd fought for, Riker finally felt something he hadn't felt since before the cliff. Peace. Not the absence of conflict. There would always be threats, always be challenges, but the deep certainty that he'd built something real, something that could bend without breaking, something that honored both his father's values and the brutal lessons he'd learned in exile. The moon rose over Black Ridge, full and bright. Somewhere in the compound, wolves began to howl, the traditional greeting to the moon, the oldest pack ritual. One by one, voices joined until the entire territory sang with unified sound. Riker added his voice to theirs,
Not as an alpha commanding obedience, but as a wolf choosing community. And in that moment, surrounded by the pack he'd died and been reborn to lead, he finally understood what his father had tried to teach him all those years ago. Leadership wasn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the most feared. It was about being present, being honest, and giving wolves something worth fighting for. Riker Thorne had become that kind of leader, and Blackridge had become that kind of pack. The Alpha's reckoning was complete.